Good morning.
Morning.
We are back here this morning with bright sunshiny faces to resume and call our meeting back to order. We left off yesterday with school improvement plans that were presented by Westmore. So today we get started with our restart schools, and we begin this morning with Robbins Elementary School. So Dr. Metcalf, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, appreciate the board's attention and willingness to come back this morning. Excited to see you. We got a lot out of our conversations yesterday. Mr. Hensley and I were talking after the meeting just about having good quality conversations is so healthy for all of us. So I appreciate that. Learned a couple of things from the board yesterday that we heard that we're already working on. One of those was about vision and mission statements and aligning that to the district's new strategic plan vision and mission. We'll work on that with one school in particular. I think we can make some changes prior to when we bring it back to the board on Monday, but we'll be working with that on all of our schools, and that's a process and a time, as you know. The other thing we heard yesterday several times that we took note of was about schools that had a discipline goal around referrals and trying to come up with some language that maybe is consistent from school to school in terms of that goal. Again, we've done some work on that yesterday afternoon, will today, and hopefully we can get that consistent language before we bring it to the board on Monday, and I will, of course, share that out with the board on Monday as we do that. So, again, thank you for the comments and insights from yesterday.
And Dr. Metcalf, we appreciate the teams that certainly presented yesterday, and our goal is to provide comments that will assist in the effort of improvement. I mean, that's what it's all about, is school improvement.
Absolutely, it's very helpful.
So having that open dialogue is helpful.
Before we get started with Robbins this morning, if we can just briefly just remind the board of restart and what the implications of that. Ms. Stewart, if you could do that for us.
Absolutely.
And
Good morning.
Do we need to I'm sorry, do we need to dim that light a little bit
Sure.
there? Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Locklear. So the next three schools that are presenting their school improvement plans are the three restart schools: Robbins Elementary, Aberdeen Elementary, and Southern Pines Middle School. The school improvement process is largely the same as the other schools you've seen yesterday. The difference is the ability to utilize restart flexibilities to support and drive school improvement efforts. As you know, restart schools have the ability to use charter-like flexibilities to implement their school improvement efforts. Those restart flexibilities are assessment, budget, class size, curriculum, calendar, and employment. Restart school improvement teams meet more often. There's a more robust monitoring process with that, more collaboration, more evaluation of the process and the implementation of the flexibilities. There's flexibility templates, and then there's an annual report. Within the school improvement planning process, the schools identify needs and performance challenges, determine their root causes, and set priorities for future action and budgeting. What you'll see next in the school improvement plans is that added layer of the restart flexibilities to try to remove those barriers to academic achievement. Any questions?
Any questions about restart before we get started? All right, we'll hand it over to Ms. Larita in Robbins Elementary School.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Dr. Locklear, board members. Thank you for having me this morning. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to share all of the wonderful things that are happening at Robbins Elementary School. I do want to start by saying it's been a difficult couple of years for us as we were hit incredibly hard by COVID-19. But through all of the ups and downs, I've seen tremendous growth in our students and our teachers in the way the teachers approach teaching and the students approach learning. So at Robbins Elementary, we have a lot of work to do. but we also have a lot to be proud of. As you can see here, our third grade students were 53.2% proficient on the math EOG, which was 17 percentage points higher than the state. According to the 7 end-of-grade tests that our students took last year, we scored higher than we did in 2020-21 on 5 out of the 7 tests, and we exceeded our pre-pandemic scores on third grade reading and math and fourth grade reading. Our economically disadvantaged students scored higher in 2020-21 on 6 out of the 7 tests, and we exceeded our pre-pandemic scores on 4 out of the 7 tests: third grade math, fourth grade reading and math, and fifth grade math, with significant improvement in proficiency on third grade math and fourth grade reading. Our English language learners scored higher in 2020-21 on 6 out of the 7 tests, and we exceeded our pre-pandemic scores on 5 out of the 7 tests: third grade reading and math, fourth grade reading, and fifth grade reading and math, with significant improvement in third grade math. Our teacher working conditions survey reflects the work that we've done to improve the culture and climate of our school for both our staff and our students. Building leadership capacity is something that I truly believe in and feel is essential in order to drive instructional improvement and improve student achievement through the development of high-quality teaching and a culture where students can thrive. We have made a concerted effort to increase the leadership capacity of our entire staff. We are a data-driven school, and we use all of our data to make informed instructional decisions. Whether it is state assessment data, district screening data, common formative assessment data, or progress monitoring, our staff examines it at the school level, the grade level, the class level, and all the way down to the individual student level to ensure that our students' academic needs are being met. At Robbins Elementary, we are not satisfied with this 5-year trend data. We know how hard our teachers have worked to improve their instructional capacity over the past few years and how capable our students are. When you look at this 5-year trend data, you will see that there is a decrease since the 2016-17 school year. Since I was not the principal until the 2019-20 school year, I cannot speak to the specific reasons for the decline. But when I arrived, it did appear that the school lacked a data focus. However, I can tell you that with the 2021-22 school year, we are seeing an improvement in proficiency in all but one area, and we will continue to keep that momentum going. The good news is that since the pandemic, we are back to or better than our previous proficiency levels. Overall, our student proficiency has improved from 2020-21 and is almost at the pre-pandemic level. As you can see, this trend continues with our reading and math. Our reading has improved and is almost at the pre-pandemic level, while our math has exceeded our pre-pandemic level. Our science proficiency has been inconsistent. As we have reflected on our science data and the circumstances surrounding the inconsistencies, we have worked to rebuild our 5th grade science program.
Ms. Larita, may I
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
one question, please? Can you let us know, how long have you been at Robbins?
This is my 4th year, so 2019-20 was my first year.
Okay, thank you.
You can see that same trend here with our subgroups. All but one of our subgroups scored higher in reading and math in 2020-21 than they did in 2021-22 than they did in 2020-21. Overall, all of these subgroups have also exceeded their pre-pandemic scores in reading and math, except for math with our white students.
Excuse me, I thought was I reading incorrectly? Or was there a problem with the African-American students in their overall proficiency for this year?
And that was going to be my question as well. Did you have a decline in enrollment in that subgroup for your school by chance?
No, not, it increased
Okay.
after redistricting
So you
our
had
African
more
American.
students in that population of
What I'm talking about is that in the African American subgroup, if I can find it here, it's up there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. We had 24% of African Americans, what is this, in reading performance. 29, and that was actually on parity, or almost on parity, roughly on parity, with the overall statistic for the entirety of the school. And then this year, it goes down to 16.7%, which is substantially below the overall parity of the school.
So-
And that's what's concerning, and what I'm wondering is, I mean, one quick explanation might be that African Americans suffered more grievously in the pandemic with learning loss. That could be, but I'm concerned about this gap.
One of the things that we've noticed at the school level is that our African American students that are with us from kindergarten perform much better in our on grade level than the ones that came later.
So how many students, just out of interest, Ms.
Sure,
Fall, how many
it's-
students
it's
in that
24
category?
24 right
It's
now.
24 students that tested in reading,
Okay.
black students who tested in reading, with no grade level having more than 10 students. So we don't have a grade level breakdown for black students, we just have the overall. And then that's comparative to 184 tests total. So there is a relatively small by grade level population of black students.
But that is what, 12, 14%, something like that, which is,
Close, yes.
the problem is that the numbers are small, so statistically, one might,
Right.
you have a kid who has a bad day, might
Right.
skew it a lot.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, it's still typical because that's roughly the percentage of, it's a little lower, but it's close to the percentage of African Americans in the county overall. So we've got to be concerned, I guess I'm saying, we've got to be concerned about it. And I hope that there is a particular strategy on the education gap with African American students so that we can come back to parity, which is what we had last year. So that's important.
Let's let her tell us what they're planning to do, because I think you're
Yeah.
asking for it, and she hadn't had a chance to supply.
Yeah, I apologize if
Oh,
I
no,
don't mean
that's
to jump the gun.
Mr. Hensley, did
So,
you have something
I
at this
do. Miss
point?
Miss Larita, you
Yes.
just said that, you did say that part of that decline was because you inherited, you gained African-American students in the redistricting. You were the second principal who said that. Yesterday, the principal of Pinehurst Elementary said the exact same thing. They went from, if I recall correctly, from 9 African-American students to 18. And she asserted that the ones they inherited in redistricting came to them in not as good a shape. So where are these magical African-American students coming from? What school did you gain your African-American students from that were not up to standard?
West End.
West End Elementary?
And I don't know, I didn't, that's, the most recent place that they came from. I don't know if, they were transient before then and moved schools frequently. It's not all on them, but like I said, what our data is showing us is that the students that are with us from kindergarten are performing better.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
So we are obviously disappointed that we did not meet expected growth last school year. But in 2019-20, we had begun building teacher capacity in order to continue to grow our students. However, the impacts from COVID-19 had a significant impact on our school, but we feel that the actions that we are currently taking will result in us exceeding growth.
Did you say exceeding? Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought you said succeeding. Okay, thank you.
So our first and second school improvement goal are around increasing our proficiency and our growth. So our first goal, by June 2024, the school will have an increase in overall grade level proficiency and subject grade level proficiency by 10 percentage points. Overall, from 31.7 to 41.7, reading from 29.3 to 39.3, math 35.9 to 45.9, and science from 26.2 to 36.2. So our student proficiency obviously is concerning, and since I began in the 2019-20 school year, we have made a commitment to using our data to ensure that we are meeting the individual needs of our students. Our students continue to make improvements, but our goal is to now capitalize on that improvement in order to increase our student proficiency and growth. We recognize the dip from 2016 to 17 to 2017-18, and then again in 21-22. We are now taking steps toward improvement, and we're excited to share with you some of the initiatives that we're doing to reverse this trend and increase our student growth and proficiency. Last year, our school leadership team began meeting with all students to develop personal academic goals based on their BOI, MOI, and EOI assessments. We felt that this was important because many of our students lacked grit when faced with difficult tasks. As we met with the students, it became clear that they had difficulty identifying things that they were proud of with regards to their academics. So throughout this process, our students have begun to take ownership of their learning and their personal data and are proud of their accomplishments. We have also identified vocabulary as a school-wide area of need. We began this year with an academic vocabulary word of the week. These vocabulary words are words that are frequently used across all content areas. Each word is introduced and discussed daily in our morning announcements, as well as in each classroom. There are visuals for the students, including a poster for each word, and every staff member wears the word on a lanyard. Students are encouraged to use these words throughout the school day. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students are using Vocabulary Surge. Vocabulary Surge is a series of 15-minute daily lessons that teaches students how to break words into parts. Hypothesize the meanings of the unknown words and check the meaning in context. These lessons also help students learn the meaning of the most common Anglo-Saxon words, affixes, Latin roots, and Greek combining forms. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students will also use Vocabulary Workshop. This vocabulary development program explicitly teaches vocabulary through students' active participation and collaboration to learn word meanings, share ideas, and engage with words in writing and speaking. As part of our commitment to using our data, we have ensured that our small group instruction and our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions are designed to meet the needs of our students. We hold weekly Kid Talks in order to ensure that the data supports the instruction and the remediation that the students are receiving. This year, to help support our 5th grade science program, we have begun using LearnEd notebooks. The goal of LearnEd notebooks is to bridge the gap between the traditional classroom and the classrooms of the future by combining ready-made student notebooks, online presentations, and teacher resources. This provides teachers and students the chance to spend more time on labs and inquiry-based science. Each notebook serves as an individual learning portfolio, enhancing student engagement and organization. Our instructional support facilitator provides the staff with professional development each month. Our PD plan is based on research-based instructional practices agreed upon by the staff as must-haves, things that need to be included in every lesson. Our leadership team walkthroughs, as well as the learning walks with staff, will focus on each of these areas after each professional development session.
Yes, and from the district, a lot of what you heard yesterday, I did want to highlight those 2 vocabulary programs we've got going at Robbins, the Vocabulary Surge and Oxford Sadler. Much like you heard yesterday from several of our schools, that vocabulary is a real area of need. We're providing that level of support. And again, modeling, coaching, lesson planning, continual walkthroughs. It's obviously a high priority school where our team is spending a great amount of time to reinforce our non-negotiables and work through those challenges. The key is to identify, use your data to identify the students who are not performing, and then work specifically with the needs of those particular students. And that work is happening small group. It's what drives school improvement.
Ms. Larita or Dr. Metcalf, before we leave this particular goal, I noticed one thing I believe that was helpful from our board's perspective yesterday in hearing from so many of our schools was the schools had already set their point of improvement for 2023. So I'm wondering, as we look at Robbins Elementary and where we want to be by June and the end of grade testing, definitely want to move from an F. So will you take a look and see how we can incorporate possibly some measurement within the goal here to say that by June 2023, we expect to increase from this point to this point? I think would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, and we've done that at the school level for each grade level. We set those goals and we hang them in our PLT room, but we can definitely do that for the school as a whole.
Thank you.
And let me piggyback on that. I would like to see, as I've said to the other people who have presented, I would like to see a specific goal with respect to educational gap. And when I say that, oddly enough, if you say I want to raise the African American score by 10% and the overall score by 10%, you add the same thing to both sides of an equation, it's still the same. In your case, I would hope that you would come to us and say, our goal is to eliminate that gap, because the gap at Robbins is not that large, oddly. And I mean, it's unacceptably large, obviously, because we don't want to see anyone. But it is within 10 points, I believe. I'm not looking at it right now, but it's within 10 points, so that you could make a goal as parity or close to parity. I don't mean to put anything into your own planning, but I would like to see that as part of the school improvement program.
So I'll go one step further. Your students feed 100% into Elise Middle School, and Elise Middle School has no achievement gap. So it's really hard to explain how the same students that have a significant achievement gap in your school go to the next school and the achievement gap is eliminated. The standard for the achievement gap is 0, because we have several schools in this district who achieve it. And especially in your case, because it's the same cohort of students.
Well, that goes back to something that came up yesterday when Mr. Martin was here talking about Elise, about the language acquisition and the 5 to 7 years that it takes for the students, especially with academic vocabulary. So we are building that foundation, and for a lot of them, it's taking that 5 to 7 years, to develop that academic language, and that helps them to be successful, because that's where it shows up. A lot of bilingual students.
Right, so we discussed that yesterday in context of the Hispanic students. So you're suggesting that the African American students are also language learners?
No, but economically disadvantaged students have that same struggle with acquiring language and academic vocabulary. It's very similar.
And you're saying that none of the Caucasian students in your school are economically disadvantaged? I would
No.
say that a lot of them are, because of the Robbins area, which is very unfortunate. I think most of the children in the Robbins area are similar economically disadvantaged. So the subgroups are very similar as far as economics, I think. I don't know.
No, you're correct. I mean, it's economically disadvantaged.
So there must be some other reason.
So let's keep moving.
Can I-
And we can come back to that if Ms. Loretta has, pardon?
I'd like to hear what Dr. Metcalf.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
no,
what
I-
I'm saying,
really was
yeah.
a question for Mr. Levy, if he's comfortable with a lot of conversation about making sure, and I appreciate that feedback, and I think you're accurate, ensuring that all the schools, Robbins and all the others, have a subgroup gap goal that's included in their plan.
That's
Is it-
basically what I'm talking about. Yes,
Is
sir.
it, are you comfortable if the wording of that is similar to the wording that we use in the strategic plan, the district strategic plan? So the district strategic plan would identify what that gap is, not necessarily a starting point or an end point, but what the gap is, and say we're gonna reduce that gap. So if the gap is 12 points, we're gonna reduce that down to 6 in a year. It's not really about moving up, and does that
That's-
make sense?
That makes a lot of sense because, and by the way, it's a great idea to align our school improvement programs with our strategic plan.
Yes.
Because isn't that the idea behind the strategic plan?
Just want to make sure that you're comfortable using that same language that we're using in the strategic plan.
Oh, for sure, because I think we're all
Thank you.
on the same page. We all want to, and we all, I think we understand that these things don't come overnight.
Yes.
That all of a sudden it's poof and it's gone. But we need to work on it. That's what I think.
We
I think
do,
your
and
staff is doing it.
I would throw this out too. I mean, I think we were talking about 24 students. There's always a lot of wobble, you know, it's, when there's so few number, it's hard from year to year, because there's wobble within that, because as you've noted before, 2 or 3 or 4 students really impact that percentage. And so it is an excellent goal. We need to focus on that, like we need to focus on every individual student. But we also have to recognize that there's natural wobble in that because such a few numbers.
But I'll look at it optimistically.
Yes.
Optimistically, 2 or 3 or 4 students
And work
do
the other
really
way, too.
well.
Yep.
And you come back here and say, look what we've done. We've done
Right, and
fantastically.
I agree that my point, and you and I are both on the exact same side. The point is, from year to year, often there
Yes,
is this with a
yes.
very small number. And one year we're high, year low, because so many factors may impact an individual student on a one testing day, and they have such an impact on the number itself.
I very much understand. I very much agree with you, yes.
So just let me comment on that. When the cohort was 6 or 3 or 5, I'm willing to accept that. But when you get into 24, that's a fairly substantial number. I mean, it's 20%, 10%, 15% of the enrollment of the school. I don't know how many children attend Robbins Elementary.
393.
Okay, so it's 8% or so. It's a significant part of the population. And to my earlier point, Robbins Elementary and Elise, I hear a lot of excuses for the achievement gap, and most frequently the finger points to economics. In the South County, okay, sure. But you go up to Robbins, and I think that many of the families are regardless of what subgroup they belong in, I believe many of the families are in similar economic situations. And that's why I think in the northern part, we see less achievement gap. Smaller schools plus similar economic conditions.
Okay, Ms. Loretta, I believe are we on number 3?
Yes.
The next page.
So our third goal is by June 2024, Robbins Elementary will decrease chronic absenteeism from 42.46% to 22.45%. Chronic absenteeism has not always been a problem. In 2018, we were 12.8%, 2019, 14.75, 2020, 6.44, and then that jump in 2021 to 42.46. As we've begun to look at our attendance data, it did show some things that contributed to that increase. In the 2021-22 school year, we had 2,164 absences due to quarantining. And then we had 1,552 due to illness or injury. So excused absences made up over half of our absences, but we do also have a concern with our unexcused absences. So this year, we are working to ensure that our students and their families are engaged in their learning and excited to come to school. As I mentioned earlier, our work with goal setting became very powerful for our leadership team and, more importantly, for our students. They were able to experience positive feelings as a result of connecting with an adult who truly cares about their academic success, create a sense of belonging, set goals, and work hard to achieve those goals, and then to feel successful when they do accomplish them. So to take the next step, this year our students will be participating in student-led conferences, and throughout the process, the students are going to become experts about their data and their learning, and will be able to explain it to a parent or a guardian. And included in this is their attendance data, and the students will be able to see the correlation between their attendance and their academic performance. So this will allow them to have complete ownership of their learning and to identify their successes and areas that need improvement.
By the way, I want to congratulate you about that. I've seen that done in other districts where students lead the parent conference. And the students feel proud, and the parents feel proud, and the student, we don't shun the student aside and say, oh, this is adult talk, because it does involve the student. So I'm very, very good. I like that.
So, and we're hoping that these relationships and then the student ownership will have positive impacts on our attendance.
I have a couple comments.
Okay.
One is, this was discussed yesterday, and just like we're taking a district-wide approach to how we're going to measure discipline and come up with something that is a true measurement, we're going to attack this district-wide as well, because a 22% truancy rate, I cut that in half because Ms. Larita talked about how, half the absences last year were COVID-related. But we have to use every tool in our quiver, up to and including dragging derelict parents to court to, get them to get their children to school. And I think we need a district-wide approach to that, because this is an issue. But the second point I want to make, and this is a failure of this school board, I find it shocking that we had a school that had a 42% truancy rate last year. Half the students, if I round up, not in school, and this school board was not alerted. And one is, why would the central office not alert the school board that we have schools approaching a 50% truancy rate? But more importantly, I've never seen an organization that did not, the leadership did not look at performance charts periodically, whether it's monthly or quarterly. And this is where this board needs the things that this board feels important, whether it's discipline, truancy, academic achievement. We need to have charts having truancy charted out over time by school or in total. We need charts, charting out discipline over time so that we can identify these trends. Think about that, fellow school board members. We had at least one school whose truancy approached 50%, and we had no idea.
To address that point, all right, you said over half of these were based on quarantines or illnesses, correct? That's not truancy, when a child is at home sick.
Right.
Right.
So, but
So-
chronic, if I'm not, is over 10.
Heather, do you mind coming up and
Well,
describing
okay, so-
some
I
chronic
would just like a little
absenteeism?
clarification on the actual
Yeah,
numbers.
okay, by
Heather,
the way, I
if you
think
can-
the
if you can-
definition.
Heather
is-
coordinates our district-wide approach to the chronic absenteeism. I'm gonna put her on the spot and ask her to define that for us.
Isn't that true?
Look,
Unexcused absences?
I can say every one time, let me restate everything I just said, just substitute the word absenteeism for truancy. Let me say, we had at least one school that the students were not in class, at least approaching 50% of the time, and this school board did not know about it. I don't care whether it's due to COVID, truancy, or any other reason. It's unsatisfactory that this board did not know about it.
But actually, we were given COVID statistics as how many people were at home every week.
Ms.
We
Carter,
got the-
you can defend it
because-
all you want,
Well,
but.
I just want to clarify to make sure we're not lumping apples and oranges here. Kids who were at home because they were on COVID quarantine we're still given assignments, and in some cases, we're even able to join remotely. Now, I can't speak for Robbins particularly, but our efforts were made to keep those children abreast of what was happening within their classes. I know we were notified regularly when it was whole classes that were quarantined. So we were not in the dark. You weren't in the dark either, because this came out in monthly reports and in the weekly and daily COVID reports. As we saw those numbers of kids who were not in school at that point.
Actually, a lot of this is not as relevant as we might think. What is relevant are the unexcused absences, because chronic absenteeism, as I read it in our policies, which we're amending portions of it, deals with unexcused absences, which means kids who are not necessarily sick. We don't have doctor's notes. There's something else. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what, and Mr. Hensley's correct, if that's a high number of unexcused absences, the board does need to be notified.
Did you have something else, Heather?
No.
Okay,
I wrote down everything that was said
Okay.
around our attendance campaign,
Okay.
about the need for charting all of the information, looking at attendance, looking at tardies. What's the difference between chronic absenteeism versus what we would want to look at for truancy, and all of the work in student support services that are working to help those students and families who are truant, and then also collecting all of the data and really identifying those needs and issues. We've looked at what happened, and now we're trying to track what's happening now to see how we're making an impact.
Can
Well,
you
and
tell us
defer-
what is happening now?
We don't
I'm
have
sorry,
that data
what was the
yet.
question?
I wonder what is happening now?
Well, so before you answer, that's exactly my point, is one of the superintendent's major goals this year, and an initiative that I applaud and the school board applauds, is the More Attendance program. So we have this goal to increase attendance in our schools, and we're not being briefed on the results of that on a monthly basis. So Ms. Carter's question buttresses my point of there's not information given to the board, and as I said yesterday, you expect what you inspect what you expect. So in December, you all can plan on start briefing truancy rates by our schools.
so let's move on.
I
Ms.
still would
Ms.
like to know, are
Loretta.
you seeing improvement I mean, we've only been in school 9 weeks, right, because we just hit the end of the grading period. Are you seeing improvement in absenteeism? I mean, there is no COVID now for quarantines. So is your attendance better this fall than you had seen last fall?
Yes, yes. We're getting a lot of flu right now, but yes, it is better.
Okay, if you would continue, please. And I know that we have, our time is moving on, so if we can get through at least our goal 4 and then your summary.
So our fourth goal, by June 2024, to improve the professional capacity of all staff to deliver high-quality, personalized instruction, as evidenced by a school-developed walkthrough tool. So one of the goals since I've been at Robbins Elementary has been to increase the professional capacity of the teachers so that they can deliver high-quality instruction. So instruction that has consistent and sustained rigor and meets the individual and diverse needs of our students. Our students can learn at high levels, and they deserve our best every day. So at Robbins, we take a very rigorous approach to data-driven instruction. Whether we are analyzing CFA data, benchmark, or state assessment data, we reflect on the patterns and trends within classes, grade levels, and school-wide in order to make decisions about instruction, curriculum, and environment. And throughout this process, we reflect on our practices and make adjustments with each of our individual classrooms across grade levels and throughout our entire school.
Yes, and you've got the items there for the district that we're working to try to provide some support from increased opportunities for collaboration, vertical planning, PD implementation, working directly with the administration as well.
So as far as our restart flexibilities, this year, we are using the employment flexibility. Right now, we have currently hired one part-time academic coach whose responsibility is reading intervention, so it's helping our classroom teachers either in the classroom or pulling students out to make sure that all students are receiving an appropriate intervention. And our goal is to hire an additional person to help with some reading and then some math on top of the academic coach that the district provided for math intervention.
Did you say that's only a part-time coach?
Yeah, yes.
And what is meant by part-time?
They work about 15 hours a week.
As opposed to what's the total number of hours? So is it a half, a third, or what? Is it a half-time, a third time, or roughly, I'm not asking for an exact percentage.
Well, it's not quite half.
Okay, and so,
Half would be 20
Yeah.
hours, 40 hours a week.
okay, so and this is, you said 15 hours? Okay.
The academic coach that we got through the state grant is 400 total hours.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gephardt, so it sounds like Ms. Larita's using some of that restart flexibility budget that we're able to recoup from that to plans are to bring an additional coach in, so.
Well, it would be my thought, and this is just me saying this, clearly I don't represent the board, but I think out of some of our funds, we could probably find some more money if we could find the coach and make sure that they're getting adequate funding for as much in terms of reading coaches as they need. And that may be more than 15 hours a week. It concerns me because that's part of the core of the problem is reading and comprehension.
I have 2 reading interventionists on staff that are there full-time.
Okay.
So this is in addition to that.
All right, well, for all I know, you might need more. I don't know. I know we've got enough school, and we've got to find out how to turn it around and what to do to turn it around. But I'll have more questions on that later.
Okay. We are using our assessment flexibility in this year in opting out of the North Carolina Early Learning Inventory to provide our kindergarten teachers time to plan and implement appropriate instruction based on their iReady and their M-Class data. So the ELI is an NCDPI requirement, and that data that's collected is not as effective as in supporting classroom instruction. So our teachers are able to gather much more timely and detailed information to meet the needs of their students using their M-Class, iReady, and their common formative assessment data. And this year, our teachers not using the ELI at the beginning of the year, we compared, they do a quarterly assessment, so we compared last year's quarterly assessment to this year's quarterly assessment, and our kindergarten teachers were able to double the amount of standards that they have covered so far this year. So that and just includes a whole host of things, so they've been able to spend more time in their instruction and meeting the needs without having to do this extra step. We've used our budget flexibility. We've purchased some Letterland intervention kits. We purchased 2 Letterland intervention kits, and those are specifically designed to provide rigorous, highly effective small group instruction to students struggling with foundational literacy skills. Again, it's grounded in the latest intervention research, and it's aligned with the Letterland program that our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade teachers use. So it's designed for both strategic and intensive instruction, either as part of the Letterland program or as a standalone intervention. So our reading intervention teachers are using it, as well as our EC teachers. Our next step with our budget flexibility is we are going to order some decodable readers to help support our implementation of the science of reading. And decodable readers provide accessible content for students to apply what they are learning during phonics instruction. So as teachers support students in developing their word recognition skills, systematic instruction in both phonemic awareness and phonics is important. And the transfer of sounds to print takes place when students engage in phonics activities and apply what they learn. So these readers help them, whatever skills they're working on in their phonics instruction, they will see in these readers, and they will be able to read those books successfully, building that phonemic awareness and phonics knowledge. And as a curriculum flexibility, we used some budget flexibility 2 years ago. The first year we were Restart to buy the interreading program for many of our classes. As we added the 4th and 5th grade dual language program, interreading was purchased for our teachers so they would have the same program in English and in Spanish. And as they were using it, the teachers really liked the program and found it to be very culturally relevant and diverse, which was a perfect fit for our students. So we expanded that to several other grade levels. So we've been using that program, not in every grade level, but most grade levels. So in order to ensure that we're meeting our school improvement goals, our entire school will be involved in effectiveness monitoring. Our students will begin by using their data notebooks to take ownership of their learning. They will become knowledgeable about their data. They will be able to speak to their strengths and weaknesses, and they will help their teachers and parents to identify ways to grow and barriers to their learning. They will become engaged in their learning and invested in their success. Our teachers will continue to use our PLT data trackers in order to monitor how each of their students is progressing throughout the school year. We will continue to frequently monitor all types of assessment data so teachers can determine if they need to adjust their instruction, provide a student with a targeted intervention, refine an intervention, utilize flexible grouping within their grade level, or seek assistance from our MTSS team. Our leadership team will conduct walkthroughs in all classrooms and collect data on our teachers' effectiveness in implementing high-quality instruction. We will provide teachers with feedback and use that information to help refine our professional development plan. The teachers will also be able to share how they have implemented the strategies from our monthly PD with their colleagues so they can learn from each other. So our continued goal at Robbins is to ignite a passion and inspire growth in both staff and students. And we've been working very hard to build the capacity of our teachers so we can grow our students in order for them to improve their proficiency. We want to have a lasting impact on our students so they can take that with them when they go on to Elise, Northmore, and to be successful adults.
Board members, do you have any comments? We need to, okay.
Yeah, just quick, if I were a principal, and I know you can't get this information to the board, but if I were a principal, I would have the same information from the state for each classroom by subgroup, and I would track that. I don't know what it would tell you, but it might tell you about something about how that specific teacher's doing. It might tell you, point out some areas that you could target specifically to resolve some of the issues you have. And I know that's a lot of paperwork, but I always found, that I had to look at the details and how we were progressing in the details before you could really get to the root cause of the problem and resolve it.
Mr. Hasley.
Thank you. Ms. Loretta, you mentioned the dual language immersion program. What percentage of students at Robbins participate in that, roughly? Just order of magnitude.
Yeah, per grade level, it's about half of the students on each grade level,
About
give or
half.
take. Yeah.
And then what percentage of those are native English speakers? Yeah, order of magnitude. I mean, is it half of the half, or is it 20%?
No, it's less than that.
25% of the half
Yeah.
or something. So let's say 25% of, well, I don't know, I'd have to think through the math, but a significant amount of your native English speakers participate in the dual language immersion program. What are your thoughts on the dual language immersion program?
I think it's very beneficial for our students. A lot of, like, the non-native Spanish-speaking students that participate in the program are very successful. It helps us in a lot of different areas, especially when we have students that come that don't speak any English. That helps them, you know, if the parents want them in the program, that helps, you know, ease the transition into learning a new language. It really helps, you know, just culturally, it helps them to be well-rounded citizens and just learn about different things. I think it's been, it's amazing to see when you go in, especially when you see your non-native speakers participating in class and being able to do, you know, just to speak a second language. And I think it's been beneficial for both students, whether they are native Spanish-speaking or not.
Yeah, so you used the word "I think" twice. And earlier, you mentioned that Robbins Elementary uses science and evidence-based programs. So could you explain the evidence behind the dual language immersion program?
Behind the
Implementation of it. You know, you mentioned earlier, and it's our goal that our school system use, you know, science and evidence-based programs. But I ask you about the program, and I hear "I think" and "I think." That doesn't sound evidence-based. You don't need to answer that. I've got some evidence here. First of all, it's worth noting that if Robbins Elementary was not a restart school, that program would be illegal. Dual language immersion programs, teaching in a language other than English, is illegal in the state of North Carolina. The only exception is restart schools. But let me, if we could go back to page 117, please, on the slides. So what I did this morning, right before this started, is I went to slide 17. I would contend, unless somebody, so yesterday it was discussed that it takes 5 to 6 years to academically master a language. And it seems to me that if you spend half your time not teaching that language to both native English speakers and non-native English speakers, that you're going to retard the development of both of those. And I will tell you my evidence. If you look there and you look at the white subgroup, 40% reading performance, right? 40% reading performance by the white subgroup at Robbins Elementary. If you go to High Falls, that's 60%. High Falls does not teach half their classes in Spanish. If you go to Cameron, that white subgroup reading performance is 60%. If you go to Carthage, it's 70%. If you go to Westmore, it's 58%. So if there's no evidence to support the dual language immersion program and how that helps our students succeed, I would say that our own statistics show that it's retarding the reading performance development of not only our Spanish-speaking people, but our English-speaking, and that when those same cohort goes to Elise Middle School, where there is no dual language program, then they succeed because they're all taught in English.
We do track our students who are in the dual language program at Robbins and those who are not in the dual language. We've tracked them for several years now. Kate, do you have that?
Yes.
I think there's been a change over the past year, but can you share that?
Sure, based on the 2020, 21, 22 data.
I'm sorry, is this something we could show up here? I'm a visual person. I won't be able to keep track.
We don't have it as part of the presentation.
We don't have it.
Not in the
We can
presentation.
get
We can
Mr.
certainly
Hinkle's copy,
share it in the
get a
board update.
copy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what we do is we break it down by grade level. So in third grade, there were 14 dual language students compared to the 49 non-dual language students. In that grade level, they came up very similar, 38.8 to 35.7 for the dual language students. In fourth grade, the 11 dual language students outperformed, if you give me a second, I'll give you the exact number. The fifth grade students outperformed the non-dual language students by 15.2 percentage points. And in fourth grade, the dual language students which is 13 students. Sorry. In fifth grade, the students did not, the last number I gave you was fourth grade. I apologize, I had that backwards. So the fourth grade students outperformed by 15.2%, and the fifth grade students underperformed compared to their dual language students. The previous year, all 3 grade levels outperformed, the dual language students outperformed their non-dual language peers in reading.
In both reading and math.
Yes.
In both reading and math, yes. Now, when you look at math, the dual language students this year, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the dual language students outperformed their non-dual language peers. So 3rd grade by 33.7%, 4th grade by 21.5%, and 5th grade by 23.3%. It's also worth noting that when you're referencing the reading grades, for all reading for 3, 4, and 5, 36 white students, and 24 black students, which we had mentioned before, and then 113 Hispanic students. So for a point of reference when you're talking about the demographics of it.
Yeah, so my initial response to that is, I would have to see the charts and study them again. That just
Absolutely,
looked like-
absolutely.
Yeah.
But my second observation is, obviously, the dual language immersion program takes resources, and it obviously takes more resources, i.e. money, to implement than a non-dual language immersion program. So, okay, let's assume for a moment that that is true and that there's not other factors that you can normalize out that would contribute to that, such as it might be the more motivated parents and better students who go into the program. So, it might be once you normalize for that goes away. But also, there could be secondary and tertiary effects, such as if we put resources into this dual language program, those resources are taken away from other elements of instruction, so that there's less quality instruction given to the people not participating. I'm not saying that's a deliberate intent, but that could be a secondary or tertiary effect. There's something wrong here, and when you compare performance with the other elementary schools in the same area, the big difference is the dual language immersion program. And I don't know whether that is true or not, but that's the difference between Robbins Elementary and the other elementary schools. And when those same children go to Elise, they seem to do a lot better.
I'm certainly not sharing my perspective on this necessarily to disagree or agree either way. But I think the dual language program offers our students some opportunities. It certainly pushes their thinking skills, certainly gives them the opportunity to master a second language. I think there's a lot of positives there. And we've tried to buckle down in the last year or so to make sure we're assessing those students as well when they're coming out of Robbins, and seeing what supports we need to support them with as they move on to Elise. The other point I would make is that I think there's other factors that we'd have to fully explore if we wanted to do a compare and contrast of Robbins Elementary and High Falls and Westmore and some other elementary schools in our district. I think there's some complex factors that go into every school and every school community. So I think we'd have to do a full review of that, and certainly we can do that and try to pinpoint some of those factors that may be some barriers at Robbins that she and her staff has to overcome and is committed to overcome versus barriers you might find at High Falls or Southern Pines Elementary or somewhere else. So I think there's something to be discussed here, and this program itself, certainly that's something we can have more discussion over.
Yeah, and just real quick, Bob.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and I will concede there's obvious benefits. I mean, you
Yeah.
culturally make, the non-English speakers feel welcome. It helps integrate them. I mean, look, there's other benefits. I just think this is a discussion that needs to be had, and, obviously you guys have, dove deep into the numbers, but I would just like an answer, one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
So I think, as to Dr. Locklear's point, looking at the program and determining whether or not that's something we need to continue or discontinue. Our time is up. Bob, have you got something quickly?
Yeah, I
Okay.
want
Okay.
to piggyback a little bit on what
Okay.
Dr. Locklear had to say, as well as what Mr. Hensley had to say. The bottom line here is we don't have an expert to come in who have turned around schools. We've got an F-rated school here and a school that did not meet growth. And I don't think we've talked about that enough, okay? Because that's the dual whammy. It's not just the rating, overall rating, but it's that they did not meet growth. And we're talking about all these things we're going to do, and I'm sure we're all, everybody is trying to do the best to turn around the school. But none of us know whether the steps that we're taking are efficacious, that whether those steps are going to do it. And the only way to know that is to bring in somebody who has previously turned around a school, maybe a similar school, I don't know, okay? And when you bring that person in, he will say, well, you're doing this and that's good, but you should point your resources here instead of there, okay? I need to know, I think I know what I don't know, and I want to admit what I don't know. So in many ways, we're putting the cart before the horse. We're putting out a plan, but we don't know what to expect out of the plan. So I would once again urge the administration to bring before us an expert, not some people from some school of education who their entire experience has been to go from school to school to school as just professors and the like, but people who have actually turned around troubled schools. And the second thing we need to do is we have to understand that what we have here is in fact a troubled school. And that doesn't mean anything, I mean, everybody at the school, because I've been there, and these are wonderful kids, and it's a wonderful administration. And ma'am, you are a very good person trying extremely hard. But we need to know what we don't know, and we have to find out what we don't know. That's the point.
Okay.
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
I would like to see what we see for the schools for reading and math by grade level. Because if we're doing our job, those scores should improve every year, all the way up through the 12th grade. That's why we may have, people graduating that are doing so poor here. So if we saw grade by grade to see if those are, if the second grade's doing better than the first grade or the subjects or whichever ones you measure, I think that would be a good clue of there was a problem somewhere and you can figure out where it is.
Thank you.
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Larita.
I'm sorry, could I just say one
Yes,
point
sir.
of clarification? I just offer just a
Yeah.
confirmation of
Yeah.
what Mr. Levy's saying, but
Yes.
also note something that I want to share. I would note, we do have some experts in the district. We do base a lot of what we're doing, we've based on what, instructional practice research would tell you. And I would compliment Ms. Donna Gephardt, who we stole away from Richmond County Schools. We've got a lot of growth out of lower performing schools. And Ms. Gephardt was a real trigger and tip of the spear, if you will, on that growth. And so we stole her away from Richmond County a couple of years ago. So I would just share that we have someone who's done this work. We have someone and she's led us in fully implementing our non-negotiables as a school district and what works. But to your point, we are exploring
Yeah.
bringing in other sets of fresh eyes who can come in and say, hey, you're doing this right, but you might want to consider doing this. Or I've seen this work better in a school of this sort. So we're continuing to double down on finding someone we can bring in to also offer that support. So
Not just
wanted to
that
commit.
not just that I've seen work better in a school of this sort, but I actually was in charge of this school, and I actually turned it around. And something like, I'm just going to use Success Academy out of New York, is maybe one example. I'm not necessarily saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. Can be very controversial. But I think that we have the resources in our district to find such people, and I believe such people exist. And by the way,
Right.
I have found a couple of simulators for driver's ed, so they do exist too.
Yes, sir. Look forward to seeing those.
Okay, Ms. Lur-
One quick, and I forgot to point this out when I was talking about the dual language immersion program. The same gap that I discussed between the white students and the surrounding school, that same gap exists for African Americans and the surrounding schools. So that gap exists for all native English speakers, is my point.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I forgot to point that
And
out.
to Bob's point, we heard yesterday that Dr. Metcalf is actually reaching out and trying to get some type of consultant, so.
Yes, we've been working on it, and
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
completely with what you're looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And we're trying to find that, somebody who has done that work, that has been sustainable, not just done it and then left, but it's
Absolutely.
sustainable
Yeah, yeah.
and in similar populations, and that narrows down the look a lot, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Ms. Loretta, thank you for coming this morning, and just one last thought of revisiting your goals and just adding measurable stats for end of school year, June 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and
Thank you.
please give our thanks to your team.
Thank
I
you.
will.
thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
Started with our presentation by Aberdeen Elementary School. Good morning, Mr. Poole.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning, good morning.
We will get started, and you can just begin.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to both share with you the story and journey of Aberdeen Elementary School and to share the vision that we have moving forward. Some of the highlights that I'd like to share with you have to do with kind of the way we've come together. It's been quite a journey to go from one building, from two buildings into one building, to share in developing a much larger space and place for our school community. We started envisioning having students feel like they belong, and that's what the house system has been for us. And so we have been steadily implementing this house system as a means of developing community. And that was important for us, particularly because we were coming from 2 buildings into one, that people felt like they belonged to something that mattered. And so the house system has been great for us. As a part of that, we've also engaged in the Capturing Kids' Hearts process to help provide a process for teachers to help develop those relationships and engage kids in meaningful ways, so that we're using similar language across the building, and that one experience in one place and language isn't different than that in another place, so that every place a kid goes, they have the similar experience. Really proud of my school community's engagement in our school. We use Class Dojo as a two-way communication tool. We have 1,500 families that are connected on Class Dojo. It's just incredible to see how they engage with our parents, with me. They don't have to go around a lot to find what they need. They can come directly to us and get the information that needed. We can get directly to them to share that information. Really proud of that. We started our lesson planning review I think before the district even began their process of lesson plan review, because one of the things we've recognized is that our lesson plans weren't robust enough. And so we started leaning in to our lesson plan processes. And particularly, we were focusing in on small group instruction. And so our teachers are required to not just say they're doing small group, but to identify specifically what's happening in those small groups, who it is in those small groups, and and why we're doing it with those kids. That's work that we were proud of, that we were doing. And so when the district announced that we were leaning in as part of our processes to look at lesson planning, we felt good because we were already beginning that process in our building. And so we're again, something we're proud of. And then we have been really developing a robust problem-solving model that allows us to look at what's happening in our building, why it's happening. And so for us to be able to identify where we are academically, behaviorally, and when we talk about behavior, we are talking not just about discipline issues, but also some attendance issues and some tardy issues, and just looking at what is that and how is that impacting instruction in the building. That's something that we have been leaning into over the last year. Really glad to have some academic coaching to come alongside our teachers and work with students and co-plan with teachers to help address some of the what we would call our Tier 2 and Tier 3 academic needs. And then the curriculum pieces as well, just making sure all of our K-3 teachers were Letterland trained. That was a huge lift for us because what we recognized was that there were teachers who were not as familiar with how to teach it, and we wanted to ensure that we were teaching it to fidelity. And so we made sure that they all got training. We got to engage in the science curriculum, the Learned Ed, which I know you've heard about already. We engaged it last year, and we believe that it is the Learned Ed curriculum and that we have implemented in our 5th grade that has gotten us some of the gains that we have in science. And I know it's not on par yet, but it gave us some great gains in science because of it. And then the Big Ideas math curriculum. I think it was new to everybody, and our teachers are leaning in. Everybody's using it. Everybody's implementing it to fidelity, and finding ways to make sure that they're using it in a way that is supporting our pacing guide and the standards. And then lastly, our artist fellow. You know, sometimes what we would consider enrichment doesn't seem to have an influence on academic gains. I know that there's some thinking around that, but I promise you it does. That this what we call a resident fellow. Artist Year is a program from AmeriCorps, and the resident fellows are in classrooms with teachers, bringing engagement strategies to the spaces with kids and allowing kids opportunities to access things that they would not have had any exposure to had they not been in the building. One of the proud moments I had was we were just recently awarded a $14,000 grant to build an outdoor classroom. And that was what they envisioned with teachers, creating another learning space. And there's some research around how that impacts, academic achievement and well-being for students. And so that was important, and so glad to be able to have done that. Yes, sir.
I have a question when you're finished on this slide, Mr. Poole. Are you finished?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay. So, obviously principals are given wide latitude to put whatever they want on school highlights. And this is actually something that Mr. Levy and I talked about last year during the school implementation programs. I see nothing there on the highlights in reference to other schools. Mr. Levy and I had discussed this. I see nothing on in your highlights except implementation of programs and levels of bureaucracy. Are you unable to point to like academic successes as a school highlight?
I'm on my way.
Okay. All right. I just didn't see them on this slide.
I'm on my way.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, all right. Let me pause there. We saw almost a 20% increase in our science GLP because of this work, and that's why it's up there. That's why that curriculum piece is up there. That's the academic side of that. And again, when we compared our M-Class and our iReady data to the district data, when we look across that, we were very comparable to the rest of the district. Those are the academic pieces that may not have been highlighted there, but they're there for us for sure.
I used to work for a guy who used to say all the time, do not confuse efforts with results.
That's right.
And, this is a means to an end, implementing these programs are a
Yes.
means to the end.
Yes, sir.
Successful implementation of the programs are not the end. The improved academic results are the end.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that is our intent, which is why when we look at the results we got last year, we were very disappointed because we know that we're putting forth great effort and implementing things that we think are effective in the work. But of course, that's part of the school improvement process, right? Is you look at what you're doing and you determine whether or not it's working, and if it's not working, you make adjustments to it. So I want to talk about some of those things that we're doing to make those adjustments.
Or Mr. Poole, you look at the data beforehand and say, has this worked elsewhere? And shall
Absolutely.
we implement it?
Absolutely.
And then if it doesn't work, you say, well, we tried.
Absolutely.
But first, look at, to see whether it's going to be efficacious. I just thought I'd throw that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
continue,
so,
Mr.
so you've seen this data already, and what's interesting about this data for me is when I look across, the trend, like, that we are as probably close to where we were pre-pandemic. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but given the losses that have happened during the pandemic, to be at that place gives me hope that we can continue to get some gains out of the work that we're doing. Again, I own the fact that this is not great data, but we are not at a place where we are at a place where we were before the pandemic, and we'll continue to move forward. Right? Again, another snapshot of it, and we recognize, right, that as you have mentioned in previous conversations, that there's an issue with our subgroups, and we have some plans to try to address those issues with those subgroups. It is, as Mr. Levy and I have talked before, it's a conundrum, right?
It is, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
It's a conundrum that we're trying to discover ways to improve upon. And I don't think that there's a quick formula for it, that it does take some trial and error, it takes some effort, it does take comparing to some places that have done it before, and what that looks like. And I have colleagues who have turned around schools, and we have been in conversation about the things that we're doing. And they have confirmed that the things that we're doing are the things that work for kids.
So if you have some colleagues who turned around schools,
I'm writing
then
it
give
down
them to
right
our,
now.
give the names
Pass
and
it
addresses to our
on.
administrator.
I will get that list.
Writing it down right
I will
now.
get that list to him. I will get that list to him. I will get that list to him. So some of the, so that you know that part of being part of the Restart program is being in touch with turnaround specialists. And so those folk are people that we consult with when we're doing our work to see whether or not the work that we're doing is impactful or effective. And so we meet on a monthly basis in a PLN to discuss and hash out what it is that's happening at schools that have been successful at it, and how do we implement that in our place. So you already have to your disposal some folk on the state level that have been working with turnaround schools and know who those people are. And so I just want to put that out there, that Heather Stewart's a great resource for you to be in touch with those people for the Restart program in the state.
So,
Okay.
since we're on this slide, and this was a question I had till the end, but now seems to be an appropriate time to ask it.
Yes, sir.
You know, keeping in mind that we actually have several schools in Moore County, schools that have no achievement gap, none. They tend to be smaller schools. So what is your assessment? What do you think the cause is of the achievement gap?
For which groups? All of them?
Specifically, well, you know, obviously they're different and every cohort's different. Specifically, let's talk about the African-American students in Aberdeen Elementary.
Sure. One of the things that I will talk about in the goals to come is how kids arrive to school impacts whether or not they are going to be successful right off the bat, or it's going to take some work to get them to that place. I would say that kids come in the door not ready for school, whether it's because they didn't go to preschool or they didn't have a robust preschool experience. And so we have to work to build that capacity into them. And part of our strategy has been then, how do we look at early intervention for our kids so that we understand what it is they're lacking and how we get them so that they're ready. That's part of the issue, is that they're not ready. And then when a kid's not ready, when a kid's struggling academically, they find other ways to divert their attention to other things.
Right.
And so we find that we have to do interventions both academically and behaviorally to try to ensure that we are helping kids stay focused and believe that they can achieve more than they thought, especially when you're experiencing struggle. It's hard to believe that you can achieve. And so we've been working with our families and with our kids to help them believe first, because if they don't believe, they won't do the work. And then doing specific interventions to help address those issues. I believe that the issue is not just about the color of their skin. Okay, so when we talk about this, I struggle with, is it just black kids? Our story and our journey has been very different. And so how we've entered school and how we view school is a communal issue as well. And so if we're going to fix things for people, we have to fix the way we see school and fix the confidence that we have that the school is for us and is going to do the things for us that we need it to do and not judge us.
Yeah, so just real quick, you bring up an interesting point, and you are absolutely correct. It is not just an African-American issue.
That's
You know,
right.
to the extent that it is a family environmental issue, you know, those problems extend to all
Might I correct that I don't think it's just a family and community issue. I think it's a community issue.
In what way?
Because to say that it's just a family issue is to say that something's going on with those families. And I would say that it's part of what the problem is. It is not just a family. It is a community. In the same way that the Aberdeen Elementary School performance is not just an Aberdeen issue, it's a school system issue, right, that you've been looking at because you've been talking about it. I think it belongs to everybody.
Well, so. if
Because I
it's a-
don't want to paint the picture that we think that families are just messed up and they don't do what they need to do with kids. I don't want to paint that picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's a community issue, then it's going to affect all subgroups equally. So there
No,
must,
no. That's not logical, that a problem affects everybody equally.
okay, so what is it, what exactly is the problem in the community that causes it to affect different subgroups separately?
if we went down that lane, then we would miss all the other things, and I don't think we can solve
Fair
that
enough.
today.
I
I don't think we can solve that today.
I'm just
Let's
trying
get
to get the
into,
opinion from the
our
expert as to
data
what the
and,
problem is.
I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying, but I think that,
I'm
that
just
takes
trying
us
to
down a
understand.
path that's away from what
Yeah,
we're
no,
really
that's a
trying to accomplish.
conversation
Yeah.
for another day.
Absolutely, and
But-
one that I'm willing to have.
Yeah.
yeah.
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
yep, understand.
So, again, you know what this is. This is probably the one that hurts me the most when I look at it. When we look that we didn't make growth, it made us really scratch our heads and say, okay, wait, we thought we were on track for making it. What happened? And we've done some data digs to help us understand some of those things. And so I want to go on to the next slide to help you.
I'm
So
sorry.
before we do,
Yeah.
Mr. Poole, let's
Yes.
back up to the previous slide before that.
Mhm.
Okay. Where you have your subgroups broken out. Can we go back one slide?
This one. Okay, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Okay. So when you look at your data
Mm-hmm.
here, and you break it out specifically for reading and math performance,
Yes, ma'am.
when you look at the outcome for 21-22, you can see clearly that you made strides, and in most of the subgroups, you either met or exceeded the year before.
Yes.
And the same thing with math, whenever you look at the 21-22 data, then for each one of these, you exceeded or met the year
Absolutely.
before. However, when you go to the next slide,
Yes.
then something happens.
This is what I'm talking about when I say it made us scratch our heads, because we looked at that same data and we go, okay, what is going on? What is going on? And again, that's why we were digging deeper into our data and saying, where are the issues? And sometimes those issues were in specific areas. If I can get to the next slide, I'll tell you what I think
Okay.
those specific areas are.
Mr. Hensley.
I have a question.
Certainly, it's certainly math, because it seems that your gap in math is a little frightening. And not so much reading, that's the weird part, but math is very frightening.
So,
Miss-
when I looked at this, I was going from left to right. I was looking at this while you were talking about the programs put in place. I'm like, okay, 41, 52, great. And then from from academic year 17-18 to 18-19, which is pre-pandemic, scores plummeted 20%. What do you attribute that to?
During the 18-19 year, one, the state test changed, right? And so there's always a drop when the test changes. What I would also say is that's also the year that we're transitioning from one building to two buildings. And I own that my leadership was distracted during that year. I own that. And I say that because it is leadership that makes the difference. It is. And the work that it took to get us into a new building was tremendous work. I think the staff was slightly distracted by that work because, thinking through what is that going to look like to go in a new building, packing, building teams together, all those things I think impacted focus. Because I think focus is what made the difference in those previous years. So then the pandemic came. It was like, how are we going to recover from this? What does recovery look like? And again, I think we're getting back on track, and I think we'll start to see the same trend that we had pre-pandemic happening
I
again.
mean, there was significant continued improvement. I mean,
Yes.
41 to 45 to
Yep.
52, that's a
Yes.
lot of work. And
It
it must have
is.
been frustrating just to see it go.
Extremely frustrated.
I would think so.
Meaning sitting at my desk crying most nights trying to figure out how we're going to get this right.
Fair enough. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So here's our plan. We understand what the dilemma is in terms of needing to grow our proficiency, and so growing it in not just our overall composite, but in all subject areas. And the way we're looking at that is we have moved our PLT process from a weekly once a week process to a per subject every week process. And so we meet specifically on ELA, specifically on math, and specifically on science every week. So teachers are in PLTs 3 times a week, leaning into what the data is telling us about this learning, and what kids are learning and what they're not learning, and how we're going to help make that better for them. We also are ensuring that Haggerty and Letterland are being taught to fidelity because, again, phonemic awareness was an issue for us. And these are 2 efforts here that we believe get us to that problem intentionally, specifically, directly. And in addition to that, when a kid is not getting it, instead of them just coming to small group once with that teacher, they're coming 3 times with that teacher or that teacher assistant to ensure that those kids are getting specific, direct, intentional instruction around those things.
If I could ask a question here before we go to the next one. I don't know if this is for Ms. Gephardt or Heather, but with your leadership and intervention with the work that you do with our Restart schools, and being in the school at Aberdeen, and certainly I know that you've tweaked and you've got the subgroup and the focus, but is there anything at this point that you are seeing that we haven't done or that we're just starting to do that will help us on the next level of improvement? And I don't know if that
It
makes.
does. It really does. One of the things, as Mr. Poole mentioned, that the structure of now his PLTs are very targeted to the conversations. Before, when you've got a 45-minute once-a-week PLT, you're trying to do reading, math, science, social studies, and all of those subject areas. So his setup now of professional learning teams gives us Tuesdays, we're able to go in and support that team just in discussing English language arts, getting to the depth of the standard and understanding the standard.
That's right.
And then having those conversations like, what are we seeing with phonemic awareness? I happen to be at his PLT Tuesday, and in the kindergarten and second grade PLT, we pulled up the year M class data and we talked about where we were with that M class data, but we were able to stay very specific in that 45 minutes on just reading, because today they're in PLTs in math. So having that structure set up. The other piece, and his second grade team is a pilot for us in the district. His second grade team is probably one of the best at understanding and going through with the letters and understanding the need for decodable text.
Yes.
So one of the pieces that we're adding, you see, that early foundation is critical. If that's one thing we can get right with the Haggerty and the Letterland and that explicitness of the phonics and phonemic awareness, that's going to help us by having those decodable texts so that we're able to take those deep dives into, if you're on short A and you're still struggling with short A, then I've got a text that's all about short A so that I can teach you repeative lettering and patterning. The other piece that we're working on in his ELA PLTs is getting into some of those science of reading foundation things like word chains and those pieces. So those are some things that we have really started. My support, myself or Elizabeth are at his PLTs at least once every other week. Some of my team is there every week. So we're really trying to intensify those conversations because it is about the material that we can have and making sure that it's implemented within the classroom. We also have a consultant coming to do, as Dante mentioned, with Letterland. She's going to be doing Letterland walks at our schools with me. She and we're going to go in and just walk the classrooms and see, where are we with fidelity in implementing Letterland?
And my next question, and then we'll move on, but with iReady and M-Class, the data that you gather, will that show, and not just Aberdeen, but all of our schools, does it give them the ability to be able to track and monitor progress before we get to June? So that everybody is seeing and knowing and.
Yeah.
It does. We actually, in M-Class, I'm going to do our K3 first. With M-Class, we are required to progress monitor students that are read every 10 days. And it tracks, we do it in the M-Class platform. So our teachers go in and put in, if they're progress monitoring me, every 10 days, if I am a student that has scored red in any subtest area. And I focus on that subtest area because that's what I should be doing in my small group instruction. So I progress monitor if they're if they have scored a yellow measure, it's 20 days, and all children in Moore County schools are assessed once a quarter if they are not, even if they're a red, blue or green. We want all students to have the opportunity to be progress monitored to ensure that we are moving kids along the continuum with the skill set. iReady also has what we call growth monitoring checks, and they look at us with the skill set.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Poole. I'm sorry.
That's okay. She articulates it so much better than I could, so I appreciate that. That's what I was saying.
Thank you.
So secondly, again, addressing the issue of growth. And part of the issue of growth is about having the right intervention in place. And so we have interventionists that are working with our Tier 2 students. And not only that, but what's not on the slide is that we have what we call intervention coaches. And so each of us are working with a grade level in the building. The leadership in the building are working with a grade level in the building. And we are meeting with grade level teams, looking at their interventions, looking at their data walls and saying, what interventions are you using with those students? Is it being effective? And not waiting until we get to progress reports or report cards to understand whether or not an intervention is being effective, but catching it every week, looking at the interventions. What is the data telling us? How do we know it's working? And if it's not working, let's figure out what we're going to do next. And again, by not waiting until the end of a period, but really tracking that more intensely to ensure that our students are getting the right intervention they need. And then whole school data tracking, doing it 3 times a year, just really looking together as a school and saying, are we on track with where we want to go? And again, not waiting until the end to look at results. Our school improvement team will analyze the data from their learning walks. They are owning this school improvement plan and walking the building in classrooms so that they can see the processes that we've put in place, the instruction that's happening in classroom, and seeing if it's aligned with our school improvement goals, and being able to talk through how do we make adjustments to the plan if we need to, and then how do we celebrate the good that is happening across the building, and not just with instruction, but also looking at attendance, behavior, and then again, the academic. And then our intent is to close the gaps for all the subgroups. And not just one subgroup. And again, we believe this intervention work is really going to make the difference in that. And it's nice to have this district support on the other side that I think is going to help make the difference.
And one of the things, Mr. Poole, that we shared with our other schools that would be helpful for Aberdeen as well is as you reflect back on your goals, if you could just add a target measure so that we can see where we are at the end of June 2023.
Okay.
And that will help us because obviously we want to begin to grow and definitely come out of our F status. So we just, by the end of June 2023, we just want to see where those measurements, target measurements are.
And that would be both on our overall performance.
Exactly.
As well as our subgroup gaps. And I always like to say, the subgroups have to grow a little bit more than the overall, otherwise you've got the same gap. You know, and that's quite important because I'd like to come back next fall and say, we've done this. As a matter of fact, we did better than our goal, which it could be, you know, that's just cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we to question time or is it?
He's got a couple of more and
Okay.
then we're gonna get to the end.
I just got a call that I have to go, but I do have
Okay.
one question.
All right.
And it's, for the vision statement, it says, every child, every day is a tiger way. What does
Yes.
that exactly mean?
this is exactly what we're talking about, that we're not satisfied when there is a child who's not performing the way that we believe that child should perform. And so, remember, vision is huge. It's one that you're reaching for.
But every child
every
is not my
child.
child, you know.
For us, that is your child.
You gotta teach them.
uh,
But, you know,
We're talking about every
seven-
child at Aberdeen Elementary School. So.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm confused with.
But that's our,
Every child, every day is the Tiger Way.
it's our school mission and vision, rather. It's focused in on the students in our building, that every child in our building, every day, is the way we want to do work.
As we had talked about yesterday and earlier this morning, Mr. Holmes, we know that there's some work to be done across the district to align our vision and missions at the school with the district's vision and mission. That just doesn't change overnight. That's a process to get to that, and we'll be working on that. Appreciate the question.
Yeah, I just think it's a little vague.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. Our third goal is around addressing the issue of discipline, specifically about aggressive behavior and disruptive behavior.
Thank you for bringing that up, sua sponte, as I say.
So we've looked at our discipline data, and one of the things that we noticed that these were some of the key areas. And it was really interesting to me the way students returned after the pandemic. That they returned not having very strong problem-solving skills. And so because of that, we saw that this was an issue in our building, and we made the decision to increase attention to it by hiring a behavior interventionist to help come alongside kids and work along with our school counselor to run small group with kids focused in on how do we help you not make decisions that become barriers to your education, specifically around this issue of aggression and disruptive behavior. Right now, Nora McNeil is serving as our interim, and it's just been a delight to have someone with that level of expertise in the building with us, coming alongside our teachers and our students and families, working to address this issue. Well, we review that behavior and attendance data because not only are they addressing disruptive behavior in the classroom, but attendance is a disruptive behavior outside of the classroom that impacts instruction. And so visiting homes with families and developing relationship with them to try to find out what the barriers are to getting kids to school on time and getting them to school is part of the effort of the behavior interventionist, our school counselor and social worker together. And then we meet bi-weekly to review our Tier 2 interventions. What students are you serving? How's it going? What else do we need to do? And then we want to ensure consistency of our PBIX matrix and house implementation. We built the house, but we didn't build the PBIX matrix, and so we didn't have clear expectations when we built it. What we realized is that we were missing that piece, so we went back this summer and rebuilt our PBIX matrix to show up our expectations, and then developed a plan about how we were going to teach and reteach and reteach and reteach those expectations across the building so that the house is built now on top of a firmer foundation. Lastly, it's our TWC goal really is about teacher retention. One of the things that happens in a building that you build in the pandemic is you don't get together. And so we noticed that our teachers weren't as connected to each other as we wanted them to be. It's a big building. A kindergarten teacher may not see a fifth grade teacher because they just feel like they're in two different places in the world. And so we have to be intentional about getting them connected, because what we know about teacher retention is that when teachers feel like they belong to a school that matters to them and that they belong to a team that's working together, they're more likely to stay and want to do the work. And so we are working on monthly team building activities. We also want them to see each other teach. And so we are allowing and setting up and getting subs in place so they could walk through and see each other teach and be able to give each other feedback and see the good that another teacher doing, get an idea from another teacher. And then we provide them additional planning days so that they can work together to collaborate, plan units out. The work of the day makes it hard sometimes to really do some long-term planning together, because again, it's a busy life as a teacher, right? Because you got recess and lunch and all those things and IEP meetings and all those things that get in the way sometimes of having the time to do some long-range planning together that's effective. And so we wanted to create the space for them to do that, so that they're leaning in and that they're working together with our CNI specialists to determine what it is we need to look at. Are we looking at the standard the right way? How we plan out those units so that we're consistently teaching, not just in one classroom, but across the classrooms, that we're consistently teaching the same information.
So I was just looking up the teacher working conditions survey
Yes,
while
sir.
you were talking. That's why I was on my phone frequently. I'm doing research. I'm
It's okay.
not like Facebooking or whatever. But anyway, you know, it is a source of pride for Moore County schools that we score significantly above the state average in teacher working conditions. And I actually put a lot of weight on that. You know, we've had an exchange in the last few weeks on that. So I was looking that up, and the district average, by the way, this is under leadership. The first question under leadership is atmosphere of trust and mutual respect.
Yes.
And the number of teachers who agree and strongly agree that that exists in your school, as you note up there, is 58.3%.
Yep.
The district average is 83%.
Yeah.
So how do you explain a 25-point difference between teachers thinking there's not an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect at Aberdeen Elementary and the district as a whole?
I will tell you that in my conversations, because again, that was one of the reasons I was crying, because I was trying to figure out what do we do different, because if you look at the history of our data, it has not been that low. And so what I believed from the feedback I've gotten from my teachers is, one, that they were emotionally fatigued from the results of COVID.
But wouldn't that carry through to the rest of the district?
You're asking me about my teachers in my building. I'm
Understand.
telling you what the feedback I got from them.
Understand.
That you can't speak to the rest of the district, but the feedback I got from them, that they were tired. There were, and it doesn't take very many teachers to be struggling to give negative feedback to influence this number as well. That I believe that there were some teachers that were really struggling with both their instruction and struggling with their relationships with others in the building, that I think contribute to some of that we got there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when people are not connected well because of the distance between them, they don't feel a sense of mutual trust and respect, because they don't have the relationships with people in order to have that developed, which is why we're helping to develop those relationships.
Yeah, and again, my observation would be those challenges, the COVID challenges would carry through. And it's also worth noting that that same disparity exists in the next couple survey questions.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Yes.
it's an issue.
It is an issue.
Yeah.
It is an issue. And again, it's an issue that we're addressing as leadership.
And,
Could-
yeah, you had talked to me, I believe, I think I was talking to you, about experienced teachers
Yes, sir.
and the lack of experienced teachers, particularly at Aberdeen Elementary. What, and maybe this question should not be directed to you, but to the administration. What are we doing to get more experienced teachers into not just Aberdeen Elementary, but the schools that really need the experienced teachers, and the schools that may not be the most desirable from the standpoint of maybe some teachers who have been teaching a while and would like to relax a little bit and don't want it to be so intense, you know? How can we get those experienced teachers into your classrooms?
Yeah. Can I clarify too that when we first pulled the building together, the year before last, we had 13 beginning teachers in the building. That's a lot of beginning teachers. There was also some turnover, and so in addition to that, when we talk about experience, we're not just talking about whether or not a teacher has years of experience under their belt, but they may not have had years of experience in the building. And so things that you're trying to implement into a building, if you don't have the staff that's been there a while, it's hard to sustain. It's like you're constantly having to restart in order to move the needle forward. And so that I want to clarify that it's not that I don't think we have effective teachers in our building.
It's not effective teachers. I think,
Yeah.
I don't think I've met, I'm sure we have a bad teacher here and there. I don't meet many of them, okay? They're each and every one of them is generally good. Some are better than others, mostly because they've been around for a long time. I always say, I'd hate to have been my first client, you know? So my question is more for the administration.
Okay.
How are we going to get the more experienced teachers into our Title I schools, into also our Title I troubled schools? And is that going to help us get these schools, particularly Aberdeen Elementary, out of an F-rated status?
Well, I can respond to that. We don't do anything as far as supplementing or stipend or something of that nature, additional pay to try to get teachers into our Title I schools. That's not something we've done yet.
The word is
Certainly-
yet.
Yet. You know, we're always open to exploring options, and we talk about things around those. We talk about those things. What we currently do is we currently have with the having Andrea Burton, who's our assistant director of human resources. She works directly with our school principals. She is a little bit of a trying to use the right term, but she really bulldog. I was going to say bird dog. She bird dogs.
There's a difference between the two.
Yeah, she bird dogs.
He's a bulldog.
I'll call her a bird dog. She bird dogs the needs of each school, the vacancies of each school, and she's constantly seeking and supporting those principals. And I've heard that almost uniformly across every principal I've talked to. Have talked about what Ms. Burton is doing and Dr. Appenfels is doing. The other thing we're exploring and looking at is being able to do some creative things with our human resources side of the hat, not necessarily of looking at how we utilize our best teachers and have them either teach more students, and provide stipends that way. There's a grant that's out there from the state that's called Advanced Teaching Roles Grant, which there'll be some future information shared with the board about that, about how we're seeking to do some creative things from the staffing standpoint to expand the impact of our best teachers. And also offer them opportunity for additional leadership with some additional pay that goes with that. So we're examining some strategies, and we'll continue to examine strategies. We need to do things we haven't done before, right? Because the pipeline of teachers isn't what it's been in the past. The experience of our teachers is not what it's been in the past, and so we need to be creative in how we support that, not just at Aberdeen, but at every school.
But we have to make sure that we give these schools the best tools that we can possibly give them. And that includes, I don't know, how does this school, or do we know how this school compares in terms of experienced teachers to, let's say, Pinehurst Elementary? Okay, do we know how that compares?
Not offhand, no, sir.
Okay, that would be a statistic which I'd like to know, because I'm gonna almost bet that we've had a lot of experienced teachers going to our, I don't wanna say, no school is an easy school, but some are easier than others, okay? And I would want some of our best, most experienced teachers to go to some of our tougher schools somehow, some way do that.
Mr. Poole, we're coming up on our time, so
Okay.
we'll allow you to do your next couple of slides.
Yes,
And then
ma'am.
we may have a couple of additional questions.
I just have to, I have to add one more
ahead.
point to this conversation.
Okay.
That I think the other thing that you were alluding to in your comments is that there are some schools that are more challenging than others. And so when you talk about this environment that teachers are working in, when the teacher works at a high-need school, it is very challenging. It's very challenging, and not that other schools are easy, but the different challenges make a demand on the teacher's life that's incredible. And so when we talk about what condition they were in, yeah, they may have come off the pandemic, like other teachers, but they didn't experience the same intensity of need that the kids in our building had shown up with. I had first and second graders not just talking about hurting themselves, but attempting to hurt themselves. That's very different, y'all. And when a teacher has to carry that emotionally, it's huge. It's huge. They're exhausted from that when they go home, and they still have to give to their families. And so I want to make sure I'm helping to paint the picture that my teachers are working their tails off to give the very best to the students and the families that we serve. And the results may not be all that great right now, but we're on our way. I believe that as we address these behavioral and mental health issues of our kids and we remove those barriers, we're going to get to the good. We've proven that we can do the good. We're going back to that good. We're going back to that good. And we don't mind being under this microscope and y'all looking at it this way. We welcome that. We are good with that because we believe that what we're doing is going to make a difference in the lives of the kids that we serve. We are capable of that.
Go ahead, Ms.
Madam Chair, just real
Okay.
quick, and this is very relevant. So it is very important that we get our best teachers into our lower performing schools. And one mechanism to do this, and I'll be quick, and we can discuss it another time, and Mr. Levy and I discussed this, is we have lots of flexibility with what we do with our locality pay. And, we just give everyone the same percentage. And it seems to me, look, we pay, part of our principal's bonus is based upon the growth of the students in their schools. And that's done on the shoulders of the teachers. But yet, when I talk about performance pay for teachers, everybody recoils in fear and says, oh my gosh, you can't do that. Well, we pay performance pay to teachers based upon growth. We know the growth in the classroom. And then people, there's all kinds of defenders of what I call the post office pay scale versus the Apple pay scale, where you're paid based upon your performance and incentive pay. So here's where that mechanism comes in, is if Moore County Schools leans forward and becomes an innovator in teacher pay and abandons the post office pay model where you're just paid based upon longevity, and we take our local supplement and we take a portion of that and we make it based upon performance, specifically student growth. And this is, Mr. Levy will point this out, the biggest opportunity for student growth is in our lower performing school. So to the extent for those teachers that are incentivized by additional pay, if we implemented a mechanism like that, it would tend to, our best performing teachers would migrate, the ones that are motivated by pay, and they're not all motivated by pay.
That is correct.
They would tend to migrate to our Title I schools because they can have the most growth and they can have the most impact, and therefore they would get paid the most. So there are mechanisms that we can look at to help incentivize our better teachers to go to our lowest performing schools.
Okay.
That's all, just a comment.
Okay.
So, as a Restart School, these are the flexibilities that we're using. In both the first 2 points, we're using budget flexibilities to pay for our behavior interventionists, but we also wanted to make sure that we put enough adults in our lower grades so that they have consistent adults in that space and not having to share a teacher assistant with another teacher. And so we went one-to-one in our first grade classrooms to ensure that there were two adults working consistently in tandem all day long with those kids to ensure that they were getting the instruction, no support that they needed. We also used our flexibility, our class size flexibility, to reassign allotments so that our 4th and 5th grade classrooms now average about 21, 22 kids. Which was huge, and we did that before the board's decision to do anything, but that we knew that was an issue for us, and we took advantage of that flexibility to ensure that those class sizes got smaller. And then we use the inter-reading curriculum. We believe it's culturally relevant curriculum. We wanted to make sure that teachers didn't have to find information all over the place, but there was one place that they could get a sound curriculum to make that happen. And then we too have made the decision not to use the kindergarten early learning inventory. We believe our teachers can get at that information a lot sooner with a lot less effort, and they can spend that effort on planning and instruction that is effective for kids. There we go. I don't know that I need to do this summary. I think you've kind of heard all of the things that we're doing. I appreciate the way my teachers and my staff are leaning into this work. It's an intense work, and they've embraced it, and it's a great thing. One of the things that happened just last week is we had our literacy mystery night. We changed the format of the way we did our family event. It wasn't a fun trunk or treat kind of deal, but it was specifically focused in on reading and literacy. And our families came and learned about the 5 domains of reading, and they learned how to help their kid at home with reading. It's one of the ways that we are intentionally leaning in with our school community to make a difference in the lives of our kids.
Any questions, comments at this time? Mr. Levy?
Yeah, just one thing I want to reiterate is I would like to see, prior to voting on this, percentage goals that you guys are willing to live by, that are realistic. And also in the discipline category, I know that you guys want to work with the kids who are discipline problems and help them along the way. But as I said before to others, I'd also like to see about the following mindset, and that is when we know that particular kids are discipline problems, we have to make sure that all the other kids are safe and feel safe. And I'm not talking about the kids who go into the mutual fights or stuff like that, but we do have children who do unfortunately assaults, where we have a kid who does something and we have a victim, okay? And I hear over and over from parents, my kid is scared to go to school because he's scared of X child doing this. It's just as important to me to make sure that the child is safe. The one who was bullied or who was hit is safe, as to make sure that the child who did the bullying or did the hitting reforms his ways. And so I'd just like for you guys to consider that kind of mindset as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Poole, for being here with us today, and we look forward to getting your updates and moving forward.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Next, we have Southern Middle. This will be our last school that we hear from.
If we can let him get through his presentation and save our questions for the end. I know I have to leave here by 12:30.
Okay,
And the more we interrupt, the longer it's taking.
Mr. Poole's brief or contemporary to the slides, which is kind of what we agreed on yesterday, is if people had questions on slides, we would discuss that, but if it wasn't related to the slide, we would hold it to the end.
I
And-
understand that.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that the more we can hold to the end, because he may answer some of those questions
Okay.
in his
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, you just wanna-
I
you just
know
wanna
that
see
our
the
time
stuff
is
before.
short, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is also no longer this is a C school, not a D school anymore.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so it's not as tough a thing. Out of success brings brevity.
Good morning, Mr. Krasinski. We welcome you this morning, and we're ready for you to begin.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, whatever it is right now. Okay, do I just, oh, thanks. Okay, here's some highlights put together around in the September time period, I was really just trying to have an honest look at the things that we genuinely should acknowledge and celebrate. And so it might be a little too specific, but I just wanted to make sure we got as specific as possible. So we definitely advanced up to a C, which is great. And there was some subgroup improvement for growth when you compare those 2 years, which are the last 2 years where there was a bona fide year's worth of academics per the state test results. And then we improved our math growth, and we improved overall math proficiency up to the C level. Very narrow and very specific. Like I said, I just want to carve out the stuff that I thought was something that you could look a teacher in the face and say, yes, this is an improvement. And then if we look at the overall grade level performance, overall there's a bump, but if you look, it's pretty flat or even declining except for Hispanic students, and you can see that black students overall are not back where they were in the 18-19 school year is what I would say there. This is a lot of information on this slide. This is just the overall information from EVOS. You can see we met growth, which is a mark, but that's within the standard deviation. Of course, we want to get that up into +1 category instead of, or at least above the neutral 0 category there. And our grade went to a 55C, which is definitely to be celebrated. And goal 1 is our academic achievement, and we have the 2-year goal there. That's how we designed it as a school improvement team. I started meeting with the school improvement team in June to get some time with teachers before they left for the year. We were actually bouncing between the 2 schools, and then I met with them over the summer. And then after the strategic plan came out, we met again to align our goals to make sure we're carrying the water to the extent we can for the strategic goals for the school district. So that's pretty straightforward, just 5 points for the next 2 years. And the action steps that we have are action steps that I carried over in no uncertain terms, compelled my team to consider because I've found success with these action steps at West End. So we have targeted improvement areas, so each teacher is responsible for taking the overall goal and owning what their portion of that goal would be, and their goal should align with the team's goal, and the team's goal should align with the school's goal. And then making sure we have good, just basic instructional practices. These things are never to be diminished, just like you bird dog the teacher working condition surveys to make sure everybody's feet are on the ground. You always want to be attentive to best instructional practices, because all the bells and whistles and programs and interventions and all that stuff is a fairly small percentage in any school. And what you really want is a strong, firm foundation in best instructional practices. And even at my previous school, there was always room for growth here, and often it's a tremendous reservoir for improvement, academic achievement. So we've brought that back. I mean, of course, I presented it in June to the school improvement team, and they're very supportive. So just making sure you have clarity and credibility. It's from a book that we got about 5 years ago. Dr. Locklear presented, and it really resonated with me, and I've been using it ever since. And then, of course, the principals and other administrators will have very specific goals that target the same thing, just as we expect from the teachers. So everybody has a piece of this and is expected to hold their end up. District's supposed to talk a little bit.
Just briefly, there's a couple of items that Mr. Kinsicki noted right out of the gate that he felt like the district could provide some additional support with. One of those was with exceptional education and just trying to make sure the continuum of support is there. The other was really around small group at the middle school, and that's, again, as we have said before, how you move things forward, and he really wanted some support around that, and the district is providing that, and it is his school on a very regular basis.
Okay. I just wanted to add this because I didn't want to think we're neglecting some of these very targeted subgroups, or and I wanted to let you guys know how we're approaching this at Southern Middle. The principals and the assistant principals each have specific goals that are around different targeted performance groups or subgroups, and there's a bulleted list of different subgroups that we are targeting, and I'm using the specialists in the building, the assistant principals in the building, and the different people, different support group people that we have, like the DIF. A great example, digital integration facilitator. I've had conversations with her. She was a former science teacher, so let's see how she can involve herself with the 8th grade science. I'm trying to get 5 points. I need 5 points. So science is a test that we're successful with at Southern. It's a successful test across the school district, but 5 points is 5 points. So if we're getting points out of science, we're getting points out of science. So that's a great example of just expecting each of these individuals to meet with me, own their piece, and they are responsible for that section of the data so that they can take the time, because if one person's looking at it all, it's overwhelming, but if each person has their piece of the pie and then we meet about it, that has been an effective model in the past.
Regardless of subgroup.
Regardless of subgroup, that's right.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we just got rid of this achievement gap and didn't have to talk about subgroups?
It would be.
I mean, that should be our goal.
That's what we're working on.
That should be our goal.
Yeah, that's what we're working on.
Yes, in this case, once again, this.
Before you get there, can
Oh,
we go?
oh, yes, oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Would you like me to go back to the previous slide?
No, he's on the graphs, so we need to move,
Got
and
it,
then we'll
okay.
go back to the graphs.
Okay, goal 2, school culture and talent development. This was designed completely by the school. We went back and forth, I think, over a month to figure out how we wanted to best approach the needs in the school. We definitely want teachers to feel valued and feel supported in the school and want to stay at Southern Middle School. And I met with the teachers during the summer. I had open invitations and set up a calendar thing to meet with all the teachers over the summer for them to come in for 30 minutes and talk with me. And universally, there's a concern about discipline and maintaining consistency and minimizing disruption. And so we framed it this way. We framed it entirely through the teacher working conditions survey. That's a valid measure. It's very consistent over many years. It's something that we can just replicate and survey anytime we want within the school. And then there's a state regulated one that comes out every 2 years. So, proof is in the pudding. So we designed our entire second goal around, rather than come up with some discipline goals that are from Educator's Handbook or some other things that I just didn't see a lot of value in or validity in the measurements of that compared to this. So this is this is how we framed it. 2 goals about managing student conduct, one specific, just a generalized about the school. These are straight from the teacher working conditions survey. And then one specific to leadership in the school, something I take very seriously. And I have found, even through the pandemic, that when you give the right opportunities for teachers and the right amount of stress and encouragement, they still can thrive and feel valued and actually come out feeling like they grew and they've learned something. And so these teacher leadership pieces is something that's very important to me as a building level administrator. So even though the second teacher leadership, teachers are an effective leader in the school, 80% seems like a decent number. But I would argue until that's 100%, you haven't tapped the opportunity to retain as many teachers as you possibly could. So we talked about that. And then the facilities and resource goal is really there to capture as many other people that wouldn't otherwise be held responsible within the school improvements plan. Ideally, we'd want to include some parents, and this does to a certain extent some campus cleanups, but we want parents to be involved and be accountable for goals. We want all support staff, custodians, everybody possible to be, so that they have something to celebrate when we do have success. It's not a getcha, it's we're on the same team and you are important and here's how. And then it's just replicated down in the second half. We've just increased it. We've increased it for the second year, but it's the same set there. And I will just add for my principal goals, I kept most of this in there, but I probably added a little bit, some of those with the principal responsibilities. I think I can do better than that. This is what the school improvement team agreed to. Yes.
I have a question about, the first statistic there, students will follow the rules of conduct. And if I read that correctly, your teachers feel strongly agree to that, only 44%.
Correct. That's correct.
So this is something that dawned on me the other day, and I have a question for you. Do students show up at your middle school undisciplined and unruly, or is that behavior they develop at middle school?
Well, I would tell you that it's the responsibility of the school to diminish any of that, whatever they bring in. In other words, if they bring in a propensity when you get in a group and they're slightly less supervised to act a certain way, it's our responsibility to not just minimize that, but educate those children to turn a corner in that.
Look, no doubt about it. It is a school's responsibility to fix what shows up, right? But my question is very specific. Are students showing up at our middle schools not having the discipline and respect that we would expect our students to have?
I do think universally the sixth grade is a challenging transition. They go from having recess and having one teacher often to having, this entirely different model. And so I don't know if it's just the nature of the transition for an 11-year-old to move up to a different school, and it might be some sort of tragic flaw within the middle school model, or it could simply be that, some kids are coming in from a different environment, and when they come into sixth grade, they don't have a firm enough understanding of how to behave in school. I think both of those things need to be considered. We've already talked as a team. I would say that the administration, every effort I put into hiring this year, I wanted to focus on sixth grade. And so that's the most stable grade with some of the strongest teachers in the building. And certainly it's a priority for me, but I've already decided, we've already decided that it wasn't enough. And so we're already talking about a sixth grade academy for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the school year, where they have an entirely different set of scheduling and focus, because if they can't learn how to, quote, do school, then it doesn't matter how anything else that we're doing. So we're already in the process of developing that, because I do think 6th and 9th grade are the 2 years that are the most challenging for children.
Yeah, the reason I bring this up is, there's 2 feeder schools into Southern Middle School, Southern Pines Elementary and Aberdeen Elementary. And over the last 2 days, I've heard both of them say, well, the students aren't showing up prepared. They're talking about, their first graders aren't showing up prepared. And then we had a little experiment caused by the school reassignment, where we took half of the students that used to go to Southern Middle School and we sent them to Cranes Creek. And all of a sudden, it appears that we have an eruption of discipline problems. So I would contend that to the extent that, you know, students at this school do not follow the rules of conduct, and 56% of your teachers think that, I just said that backwards, that those students are coming from somewhere, and they're coming from 2 elementary schools, and that perhaps the discipline and respect are not being fomented in those elementary schools. So in fact, this is not a middle school problem. Perhaps it's a problem in one or more of our elementary schools, and the middle schools inherit the problem and then have to address it.
Well, one thing we certainly could do, because we're scheduled to give this survey next week, our chair is in charge of that, Ms. Hippenmeyer in 6th grade. We can tease out what I'm thinking now that I'm talking to you. We can tease out the difference between the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. It's harder though, because the on-course share kids. It'd be hard to see that. It's really small sample size. You're only going to get 8 or 9 teachers for each grade level to say. But I would like to. That's interesting. I'd like to see if 8th grade teachers feel this the same way that a 6th grade teacher does. You bet.
Right. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Is he done? Is he ready
No,
for
he
questions,
has
or
a couple
is-
of more
got some more
slides.
stuff?
Yeah, not too many. I'll
He has a couple
go as
more
fast as I
slides.
can. All right, so here are some action steps that we're doing. The restorative practice piece, it sounds more elaborate. It's really just a way to process the discipline for children. It's not a hand-holding thing. You need to own it, and then you need to come up with ways to repair the harm that's been caused, and then there's a way to welcome people back in, as I say, to the warmth of the fire, so they don't carry the shame and their head's right, so they can get back to work. So it's a very simple process. It's been around since the 70s, and when I was at the alternative school for those years, stretched and reaching for ways to improve the school, this is where I landed, and I've carried it with me ever since. And so I am working with staff, compelling them, giving them the research, giving them the evidence, rather than giving them a book to say, follow this. I'm providing all the work that I did to them so they can arrive at that conclusion, because it's more practical than any other way I've found to manage student discipline and get them back to work, because that's what we want. We want to pull those scores. So we're going to work on that. We've already had some of that work done in the school. And we're going to practice effective student referral process. So that's on us to get the alignment right. So we're managing our discipline fairly and consistently, and the teachers understand that. And so that's between us and the teachers and the school administrators. Distribute leadership throughout the school. That's how, if you're asking me how to retain teachers, that's how you do it. You make them feel like you make sure they know that they're a part of the improvement of the school. And develop and implement teacher-led mentor program. I did that at West End, and they developed it, and then we've taken that over to Southern Middle and given it to the PE department, and they're developing it. I just got an email while I was sitting in the room. It's fantastic. We're going to implement it right after Christmas break. And then just strong communication. We're just looking at how to make sure we bird dog the fact that kids aren't coming to school, and we've done a few things, including just borrowing what the freebie that the high school was doing, which is every time someone's out, an auto message goes. Didn't cost anything. Took about 15 minutes to write the message, and it's just, it's another way to make sure parents know that your kid's not at school. So
Do you do that every day?
every time a kid's absent, starting about 3 weeks ago, it took a while to get you can speak to that. It took a while for that to get into place, but yeah.
Note to the administration, all of our other schools have said we wait 2 days, okay? This appears to be feasible to do it each and every day.
Well,
And that's important.
If we set it up universally, he can speak to that, but that's what my thought was. When the kid's out, we make a phone call.
You want to talk about that?
Yes, sir, if I may. So this idea originated with Sean, This has been in place for a number of years at all of our high schools, as you alluded
No,
to.
I know that, yeah.
Okay, so let me jump to the end. At this point, all of our middle schools, except the north end at this time, already have these in place. We're set up to handle the additional middle schools as soon as they tell us to go.
Well, what
He's
do you
asking
need?
about how
Do you
many
need
days.
money? Do you need money?
No,
or is
sir.
it-
No, budget
Or is it
neutral.
just Dr. Locklear says, go do it?
To this point, the site-based administrator tells us, IT gets it set up, and we can make calls, but the calls go out the night of the absence.
No, that's fine. Although it would be nice if it could go out even out in the middle of the day, but that's another story. What about our elementary schools?
At this time, we do not have that in place.
Okay, but you can put it in place, right?
Yes, sir.
And it doesn't cost much money, if anything, it's just
Nothing.
time?
Doesn't cost.
That is correct.
Note to administration, is that possible as a way to fairly inexpensively take care of some of our absentee problems?
Yeah, the only thing I would say about because just came off the elementary school wagon, is that usually a teacher only has 20 kids in there, and they're pretty connected to those parents in a way that they're not when you have 120 kids at a middle school or a high school, whatever they have. And so it's less of I just don't see it as much of that generic message is not as intimate as a teacher who, in my entire career at the elementary school, would be calling for sure.
No, I know
Yeah.
it's not as intimate, and I know after 2 days or so, the teacher might want to do something, but the teachers only have so much time.
Yeah.
And this is something that I guess is done automatically, and the worst thing you get, because I've known it happens in the high school, is the parents saying, didn't they know my child was over at band, over in Raleigh today, something like that. But that's okay, all right? At least, that's just a little bit of a bother. But we get the parents thinking that their child is absent, and get them thinking that the school knows that the child is absent. And the parent who, because it's sad, there are some parents who, well, I'm a little tired today, and I couldn't get Johnny to school, so I don't think I'm taking him to school today. Let him know somebody's looking, somebody's watching,
We'll bring it to the elementary. and-
Yes,
and the other
please.
middle schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for the record, I didn't come up with that idea. Katie Hippenmeyer, from a teacher at my school, came up with that idea at the school improvement plan, but yeah, it's great. All right. Okay, here's some of the work that we're doing. We've labeled this under the restart flexibilities, but that just gave us kind of an open gate for some of this stuff. So we put in place some Saturday schools. We budgeted for that the last 2 Saturdays before the end of each quarter. We just finished 2 of those. I feel that the second one was more successful. The kids, I monitored a little bit of the work that we're doing, but there's plenty of meat left on that bone. I would say that we have a lot of work to do to make sure kids are taking advantage of that. But there was about 25 kids there last weekend, but we can do better than that. But we've kicked it off. After school tutoring twice a week, we have 7 or 8 teachers. Not every single teacher does that twice a week, but that is in place, and I think that is very effective. Both those are very effective. Bus monitors for routes with significant delays and behavior concerns. That was another thing that was pretty universal when I met with teachers, is the concerns about the bus. And also teachers were burdened with having to sit in the cafeteria on a rotational basis to watch kids up to an hour, hour and a half, because buses weren't there yet. And that does have a toll on teachers, because that after-school time is time when you can do some other things and when you're monitoring 100 kids in the cafeteria. So we got pretty creative with that and used some of our flexibility to get some TAs and some other folks that might want to take advantage of a few extra hours of work a week to support that, and also help with the discipline on the buses in the afternoons. We created a Dean of Students position, also based on the feedback from the teachers, and we got really creative with that on how to fund that. I guess we'll leave it at that. That's a longer discussion, but that has been instrumental to be able to support the school. Sandy Bear's doing a great job with that for us. And then, of course, as you guys know, you approved it recently, the second semester extension of the school day, and we started that campaign to make sure folks know about it. We're taking advantage of the next 2 days with parents coming in the afternoon today, and also parent conferences tomorrow to present the calendar that mimics the school district calendar with the changes specific to Southern Middle School. And we've had some meetings in the evenings, and we will have additional meetings online or virtual Google Meets during the school day to let parents, if they have any questions. So far, there haven't been a bunch of questions, but I'm anticipating the questions and concerns will increase as we get closer to the January 4th date.
Can we go back one,
Yes,
please?
yes.
So I saw your post on the Saturday school, and I was excited to see that. Is there anything we can do to help boost attendance? I mean, did you have transportation? Did the Moore County Schools Communications Department do a phone blast or anything?
We probably did about 3 of our own blasts the week leading up to Saturday. I mean, I don't think the phone blast, it was clear. We did not offer any transportation. Same thing with after-school tutoring. There's a transportation barrier. That's one of the reasons we went to that last bullet, which is that's a time when transportation, et cetera, is not going to be a barrier, so we can at least capture kids that otherwise can't come to these where they need it, the transportation piece. No, that's as far as we got with that.
Yeah.
But we can improve. We can definitely improve as a school to maybe selectively hand call. Administrators can get out there and physically call each of these individual kids and compel parents. That stuff really works, and it's just a matter of, I just wanted to see how it played out before we overdid it, because that's a lot of extra work, but I'm not satisfied with the turnout. Although the second one, kids took more seriously and they got a lot of, I would say grades improved. Those 25 kids got a lot out of that 3 hours on Saturday.
I see everything on this as important initiatives, and not only is it initiatives, but it's showing initiative, right? So we just need to make sure that they have whatever resources we can muster to help turn out the students.
And by the way, that might include also note to administration. Let this board know what the cost of providing transportation, if it's feasible. I mean, we might not have a bus driver to do it, I have no idea. But what the cost of providing that transportation is going to be for this extra schooling, because it may be that if it's $100,000, I'm just taking a figure out of the air, that we can find it somewhere, because the kids who need this probably need the transportation just as much, so.
May I ask you, Mr. Kay, how are the students selected to be invited to Saturday school, and how do you anticipate selecting those students that will attend the extra Friday morning sessions?
I think they're on Wednesdays.
Oh,
The
excuse me.
the Saturday school is, I mean, we pressure the students appropriately, but there's no selection. Anyone's welcome to come to Saturday
Okay.
school. It's available for the students, and for this tutoring, we have very selective, or we've articulated, Ms. Starcher sends out weekly, multiple times a week usually, this 7th grade ELA will be in this room, so math will be in this room. We've tried to specify it as much as possible so that they're able to make the best decision, so that the parent can say, oh yes, you're going to stay today, that kind of thing. But that's just green shoots there. We have not captured and developed that program the way that I know we can. I think next quarter will increase, for sure.
Could you also find out what percentage of students who really need it
Yep.
come to Saturday schools?
Yep.
So the lowest performing, you could have a tier
Yep.
of the lowest performing. And what do we need, what resources do we need as a board to provide you to assist in getting those very needy kids
Yep.
over to you Saturdays?
Yeah, we had sign-in sheets. I have that data. I mean, I can work through that because the way we process Saturday school, I intentionally, so in case I needed to go back and look and see what were the gains, what were the losses, what did we leave on the table. So I definitely will be doing that. Already thinking about, other than the part what you guys to do, I was already thinking about how to process who benefited and who should have benefited.
And let me also say one other thing. I so congratulate you for being so innovative and so thinking outside the box, because that is the kind of the thing we need, is the thinking outside the box, the things that haven't been tried, that maybe have been tried other places, but haven't been tried here. And so I please encourage you to continue to think outside the box, but also talk it up to some of our other middle school and elementary school principals.
Yes, sir. Okay, so to sum up, the first bullet is the most important bullet on here, is what I would say is the principle-driven collection of data through the walkthrough. So when we say we're going to improve instruction, first-time instruction, that's on me. And I've committed to 20 per week. I'm at 100, so when we started, I feel like I'm at my goal, and it's outstanding data to collect. And I collect a little bit more. Jamie's with me last year. We developed a simple thing I can do on my phone, doesn't cost anything, and it takes me about, 90 seconds after I walk out of class and put it on my phone. And I've collected data from 100 walkthroughs so far, and it's valuable. So now I don't have to tell them this is what's happening and this is what's not happening. I simply say, I have some of it. I can say right now that 14.4% of the time I'm not seeing the learning target presented in any appreciable way. That should be 0. And it's not, and the reason I'm only doing it is because I don't want them to consider, well, this person interprets it that way and this other admin, this is me, and I'm telling you that's what I saw. And that's what I did at West End. It works. So that's what we're doing. And I'm trying to lead the professional development in the building in the way that I, as a middle school teacher for 15 years, would want it to have been presented to me. And that's also important. We are starting a student leadership group, and that came out of students coming to me and asking for that. And we have the sign-ups going out this week, and we'll meet for lunch twice a month. And we have a criterion, but it's not based necessarily just on grades or if they've had some behavior. It's generalized enough to where we can get a nice group of folks in there that'll really benefit from that. And then we do have professional, our school will be in those meetings with the PLCs. And I'm guilty, I haven't been in those as much as I was at West End, but my support has. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krasinski. And I know we've talked, Dr. Locklear, about our consultants and, bringing additional support. However, whenever we listen to some of our principals, we've got consultants right here in the district. And utilizing someone like Mr. K, he came from a B school as an elementary school, and now he is at Southern Middle, and we can see all of his thoughts and his processes for improvement. So working with our team on the same level to see, what others are missing, where others may be able to come up, but, train the trainer, so to speak. Board members, do you have questions?
I have two questions.
Mr. Hensley.
So my first question is, you know, we have teachers, we have teachers' assistants, we have academic coaches, we have instructional coaches, and we have MTSS facilitators, we have this and that, and we have deans of students. At what point do we just cut the class sizes in half and hire twice as, you know, notwithstanding Ms. Carter's concerns, the teachers may, let's just assume for a second that the teachers exist, right? At some point, it seems like we've hired so many people I can't think of the word.
Supervise?
No, to supervise,
Support,
yeah, well,
support, yeah.
to support, that's not quite the word. Seem to facilitate the teachers, that it's just cheaper just to hire an additional teacher. And if we cut the class sizes in half, then a lot of the problems will go away, because the classes will be small enough where the teachers can handle those, and they actually have those relationships with the students.
If you get the classes too small, then the building capacity becomes an issue. But yeah,
Sure.
in a perfect scenario, that's exactly what I would want, is you would have 23 kids in every single class and have a highly effective teacher with them and someone to just kind of manage the team. That would be ideal. The Dean of Students didn't come about as a June thought.
Right.
But we had some teaching positions that we couldn't fill, and trying to find some ways to be creative, and I knew I could pull in some talent. Sometimes if you're asking, the best way to approach it is go more to those advanced teaching role models where teachers can feel like they're accelerating, and because they don't want to be administrators, but they want to advance through their careers. Like my instructional coach, Courtney, is one of the greatest teachers that has ever participated in the state of North Carolina, but she was looking for a way to advance her career. So if we had a more elaborate advanced teacher role in place where they're supervising 3 or 4 teachers, they teach some, and then they teach teachers, and they kind of own a pod. They're doing that in multiple counties. I think Union County is doing that to a high degree, a very successful county. That would be a way for our teachers to feel like they're moving through the ranks in their career and not stalling out, but also still keeping them focused on the main thing, which is education of the children. That's the place that I would look toward for sure.
Right. Yeah, and augment was the word I was looking for. I wrote it
Augment.
down, as always, I forget again. So my point is, it seems like we spend so much money building bureaucracy, and I am calling a teacher assistant. We spend so much money augmenting teachers and then building bureaucracy around augmenting teachers that if someone did the math, assuming the teachers exist, we could hire twice as many teachers, or maybe 50% more teachers for the same amount of money. And maybe we'll find we don't need a dean of students to enforce discipline, because class sizes are small enough that the teachers are actually more effective, and a lot of those discipline problems go away. By the way, that is Mr. Levy's idea, not mine. I'm just plagiarizing it from him, so I need to give him. So it's just something that we need to consider, because, you know, at some point you keep putting Band-Aids, 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 Band-Aids on. You just rip the Band-Aid off and treat the wound. And if treating the wound is 50% more teachers, we may find it's the same amount of money, and we may find it's more effective. So that's my first question. My second question, I've asked this of everybody from the low performing schools. Obviously, there's an achievement gap. Keeping in mind that we have several schools in Moore County that have 0 achievement gap. What do you attribute the achievement gap to?
I think that students come to the school with a certain ability to start with. So whether it's they come in at 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever grade they join the school, and often if they've not been successful in school, there's a lot of behaviors and cover-ups, and kids just don't understand or have the confidence to be able to succeed in the classroom, and so they have learned a way to maneuver around the hard work of school. That's what I would say. There's just a large percentage of kids that have learned how to maneuver around the hard work, and they're actually making it harder for themselves, but they're kids. They don't know that. And so when we talk about managing students' behavior, it's more than just stopping them from punching each other in the bathroom. It's about how do they sit down and feel affiliated with this classroom and feel like when I leave in an hour, I've experienced success. And some of that's emotional, and some of it's the way the teacher understands that student, and some of it's the way we deliver the instruction. A lot of it's the way we deliver the instruction. And sometimes it's the curriculum itself, but that is the challenge. It's having the kid feel that they can sit down and be successful for that hour or 90 minutes or whatever, and different populations have a different relationship with that time in the classroom. That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Just one question.
Okay.
I thought I read that you've set specific, and I apologize, I had to, I'll leave for a second, that you set specific goals for the achievement gap.
Yes, I set them within the administrator's goals. So we have goals that we're responsible for our supervisors that are embedded in our,
What I would like to see,
and I think I did,
there is a list of like
Yeah.
4 points here and 5 points here,
Yeah.
stuff like that. What I would like to see prior to our vote on this are set goals for lowering the achievement gap, especially as between African American students and the overall population, and specific set goals to raise the overall grade level performance, so that when you come back in a year from now, or maybe it's gonna be 2 years, because you're no longer a low-performing school, that we can then have something to measure by.
so transpose,
We'll be working on that.
okay,
across all
yes.
schools.
I think they know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
it's,
about.
it's a common thing. We'll
It may
working
be
on.
already here, but just
Yeah.
could be put in a different format. Maybe that's
Yeah,
it.
we're committed to having subsets of the overall goals that identify the specific goals that we have for our subgroups, and the growth that we expect in a year with those that those teams are shooting for. There's a place in the school improvement plan that could fit very nicely. So
Okay, I appreciate that,
we're
Dr.
committed to
Locklear.
that. Yes, sir.
Ms. Carter, any questions?
No, just one comment on the whole presentation, which has been fantastic, but it would be very beneficial next year for the board when they review, to see demographics with the when we're looking at the black population or the white population or the Hispanic population, to see either what percentage that is of the school or sheer number, to put it a little bit more into perspective.
It's good feedback. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. K before he leaves? Thank you so much for
Thank y'all.
coming.
Thanks, y'all.
And please thank your team for the work that they're doing on their school improvement plans.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Board members, at this time, additional to your comment about having data for the demographic population and Bob's comments about individual specific metrics for the schools, so that when we see those on Monday, that we know what the targets are. Other specific items that have been asked from yesterday and today was a specific plan, district plan, to follow up on absenteeism, to be able to track that. Also, metrics for tracking and measuring discipline referrals was another item that we heard more than once. Aligning individual school mission, vision, plans with our strategic, and you have spoken to that, Dr. Metcalf, that is already underway.
Yeah, I would say I think there's one school in particular that we need to
Yeah.
make some adjustments
Yeah.
before Monday.
Yeah,
that is a process for
Yeah.
all schools that will take some
Yeah.
time to do correctly with community input and so forth.
Right, and
It
so,
may not
so
be done by Monday for
to
all
be
schools.
clear, these items are not necessarily for
Thank
Monday,
you.
but they were items that were mentioned that at some point that we need to try to follow up on.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
do think there's some that need to be addressed before Monday,
Yeah.
before we bring it back to the board, and we'll work on it.
And then the other one was, for Dr. Locklear, for you and your team to just revisit and, think through the dual language, immersion program, whether or not we, do we need that? Is it time to do something differently? So that was another comment that our board member, mentioned. Any comments? Dr. Metcalf, do you have any comments, or
No.
Dr. Powers?
Just really appreciate the board's engagement over 2 very long days. It's a great pleasure for our principals to be able to share the work that they're doing at school and to get feedback from the board and some direction and some input. So thank you
Okay.
very much.
Dr. Locklear?
Just echo that comment, appreciative of the board's engagement, feedback, thought-provoking discussion. I also would like to thank our school teams. Did a lot of work, and it's a continued work. As I say, you plan to work, you work to plan. And these school improvement plans are working, living documents. And so as they gather data throughout the year, they'll tweak action steps, they'll modify what they're doing, or double down on what they're doing. And so I'm appreciative of them, appreciative of Mike and his whole team, really our whole team. This is a whole district effort. There could be an operational side to this, there could be a human resource side of this, there's academic, student, sports services side of this, and I'm grateful for the team for their commitment. And just a quick reminder to the board that, remember, as part of these school improvement plans, be coming back in closed session on Monday, it's a safe schools portion. So just want to remind the board, you've had some time to look at those. You got any questions, please let Dr. Powers know.
And board members should bring their information back to you, and try to get questions to you before Monday. Okay. Mr. Dennison, we didn't adjourn yesterday just because we were waiting on you to be here today.
We're not going to adjourn right now because I have a comment.
Okay, all right. Okay.
There was a lot of talk about the pandemic loss, so I just want to give you some facts based on the district performance score. In 18-19, our district performance score rated 36 in the state.
Did you say 18-19?
Yes.
Academic year.
Oh, 18, never mind. I just,
This is not a history lesson. Yes,
it's
200.
it's very late and we're very tired. I just,
So I'll just say 19. We ranked 36 in the state. 2021, we ranked 20th in the state. And I attribute that to the fact that Moore County schools had a learning loss of 9.2%, which was the 5th lowest in the state. So attribute a lot of that to the work we had already done with virtual learning, the fact that we were able to make that progress. And then I think last year, Mike, it was what, 22? We ranked 22.
23.
And then Bob, I just had a suggestion on the gap. You don't have a target with the gap for the people you want to raise. I suggest that you think about raising it a certain percentage, because they need to know exactly where they need to read. The attainment gap wouldn't motivate me to do something, but to know specifically what I had to do to raise. And you don't have to comment on it. This is just a suggestion. It's a lot easier if you have a specific goal for those students that you want to improve.
Mr.
That's it.
Hensley?
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that is how the district's goal is worded, which we decided.
yes,
we're gonna
yes,
do.
we did that.
Yeah.
Because the overall performance will be less. I mean, you're going to want improvement in the overall performance, but that will be less than the improvement in the gap, so that the gap narrows. That's what it's all about.
Well, hopefully not all by the high
We
performance
have a
students.
hard stop.
Yeah, so I started writing down potential things to talk about yesterday, and I jotted them down. And my first note, although I'm gonna modify it a bit, was, the first thing I wrote down is, boy, there is no shortage of ambition in these school improvement plans. And I have to say that the first day, that was 100% true, or at least the first half of the first day. I saw schools that were, I mean, their goal was to increase their letter grade in a year. And I wrote down, Dr. Locklear, no shortage of ambition, thumbs up. But I have to modify those, because as we started going along, the ambition got less and less. And all of a sudden, it went from these lofty ambition to, well, we'll do this in 2 years. And the goal wasn't a letter grade increase, it was a smaller increase. And in my mind, it culminated in a low-performing school whose vision statement is all are welcome. All are welcome. So we went from our high-performing schools having these very ambitious goals, which I assume are a reflection of a very ambitious leader, down to, as we started getting into our lower-performing schools, their school improvement plan was less ambitious. And I think that's a reflection of a leadership. If I was a principal of a low-performing school, I would put more thought into my school improvement plan than my vision saying all are welcome. So anyway, we have schools that have no shortage of ambition, and then we have schools that, as reflected in their school improvement plan, in my opinion, show a lack of ambition on part of their leadership. Clearly, we need to work, and most school principals acknowledge this, we need to work on student discipline and respect and making our schools safe. We've talked about that. One takeaway that I got is smaller schools appear to have fewer academic achievement disparities. So when we look at building newer schools, we need to look at building smaller, community-oriented schools. And then finally, clearly, and this is a goal it was a goal of the superintendents from day one, is cracking down on truancy. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Dennison,
Madam Chair, move the meeting be adjourned.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will adjourn.